I become the Demon King in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 The Power of the Spider Totem. In the Marvel Universe, whether it's technology or superpowers, anything animal-related has a corresponding totemic power, such as the Spider Totem, the Black Panther Totem, and the Gorilla Totem power possessed by the leader of the High Mountain tribes of Wakanda. Each totem has its own deity, such as the Spider God, the Black Panther Goddess, and the Gorilla God. The grimoire Rupert Wood retrieved from the Ancient One's library contains a record of the Spider God. The Spider God, also known as the Great Weaver, controls the power of the Spider Totem. This is a multiverse-spanning supernatural deity, responsible for Spider-Man and all those who possess spider powers across the multiverse. Totemic power isn't about good or evil, it can be either good or evil. Rather, it's up to the recipient to determine their own good or evil, depending on their perspective. For example, an animal possessing spider powers will clearly have a different view of good and evil than a human. The genuine Steve Rogers, who had already rushed over, clearly didn't care. Even if he knew, after witnessing the bloody scene before him, he would inevitably interpret the Spider Totem's power as evil. "Johnny, do it," Steve shouted at Johnny Blaze. Johnny instantly transformed, his entire body ablaze with fire. He ripped the chains from his shoulders, and with a flick of his flaming skeleton arm, the iron chains were engulfed in hellfire. "Shoot them! Kill them!" Cliff Walter screamed. Damn it! Where did they come from? As a renowned Phoenix capitalist, Cliff had ventured into medicine with the goal of developing drugs that would strengthen the body and even prolong life. Almost all capitalists harbor this desire in their old age. The only difference is that some have less assets to support independent laboratories, so they resort to buying shares in pharmaceutical conglomerates, hoping to profit from the profits while they themselves enjoy the spoils. The drugs Cliff was experimenting with in this small town were precisely this type of drug. The area was remote, had a large elderly population, and the mines doubled as a dumping ground for chemical waste, a perfect combination. So, years ago, he purchased the land surrounding the town from the former mine owner. When Rupert approached him, he'd promised him a magical spell that would summon a powerful deity, granting him superpowers and a formidable physique. Forced by the threat of force and his desire for health, Cliff was easily persuaded. After all he had to sacrifice were live animals and doomed experiments. Unexpectedly, a group of men arrived at the last moment to disrupt the situation. Bullets fired at Johnny were blocked by swirling chains. The flaming chains, like fiery snakes, trembled and lunged at the armed bodyguards. Hellfire enveloped them, instantly reducing their bodies to charcoal. These scumbags had blood on their hands, they should have died 7 or 8 times over. There was no way they could withstand the judgment of hellfire. The serpents swept over, instantly wiping out most of Cliff's men. Steve, confident in Johnny's strength, ignored his fight and led the civilian eunuch straight towards Rupert, who was at the center of the summoning circle. As the last bucket of blood flew into the air, a brilliant flash of light suddenly appeared deep within the mine, dozens of meters above the surface. The main hue was purple, but it was woven with a web of shimmering white light. It seemed to have been projected from an unknown dimension, bridging time and space. It worked. Rupert was stunned for a moment, then burst into ecstasy. Haha, it worked. Rupert felt a pain in his chest, and he quickly tore open his shirt, only to discover a black spider pattern on his chest. At that moment, Steve had already rushed over, wielding a lightsaber and slashing at Rupert. Rupert, in his ecstasy, seemed oblivious to the attack, yet his body strangely leaned back, nimbly avoiding the blow, his legs stepping back repeatedly. He leaned back from the knees up, relying solely on his calves for support, and managed to reach a speed even faster than a normal run. This unusual movement caught Steve off guard, and his next move also missed, striking the mine floor. Rupert, however, drew his sword and rolled over onto his stomach, supporting himself with his legs and one hand. He moved like an arthropod, his speed surpassing even the normal movements of the Exorcist's sword manual. Closing in on Steve, he thrust his Western-style longsword repeatedly, focusing on his lower body. Steve stumbled back a few steps before leaping, conjuring wings of light with his magic, and soared into flight. Seeing this, Rupert quickly leaped to the wall of the mine, his legs planted against it, and sprinted up to the roof. With his free hands, he swung his sword, continuing his battle with the soaring Steve. While the connecting tunnels were relatively spacious, they were still underground, making them narrower than the outside world. Rupert, relying on his newly acquired spider power and lacking the silk-spinning machinery, managed to maintain his ability to scale walls and eaves, fighting Steve for over a dozen rounds. However, he could only exploit Steve's unfamiliarity with the tactics. Once Steve became accustomed to them, the huge gap in strength became apparent. A flash of green light appeared, and suddenly, a dozen Steves appeared in the mine, each seemingly real. They surrounded Rupert from all directions. Rupert was startled, then swiftly unleashed his swordsmanship. Leveraging the spider's power, he swung his sword even faster than usual, his sharp blade flashing like a burst of lightning. The blade pierced Steve's body, but it seemed to penetrate nothing. These were merely shadowy clones designed to deceive the eye. Everything happened in an instant. Steve's palm glowed red again, accurately locating Rupert. With a powerful tug, Steve forcibly pulled the flailing Rupert down. His lightsaber swept upward, piercing Rupert's abdomen like a giant spider impaled by a child's stick. Steve held back no mercy against this scoundrel who had used human sacrifices. The two engaged in a swift, relentless fight. By the time their encounter was over, Johnny and several other eunuchs had eliminated Cliff's men, leaving Cliff himself at Steve's feet. "You, Cliff," panicking but feigning composure, threatened, "You can't kill me. I'm a state legislator from Arizona. Kill me, and the whole of America will not let you off." Johnny and the other eunuchs, still harboring a subconscious unease common to ordinary Americans regarding the wealthy and powerful, subconsciously held back from killing. After all, in the West, where ideologies of bloodline and money above all else pervade, the common people have long been tamed by the powerful. There's no such thing as kings, princes, generals, and ministers are all born with the common species, or emperors take turns. The common people harbor a natural fear of these wealthy and powerful individuals, believing them to be inherently superior. Some say the West advocates for equal human rights. That's a concept only accessible to the educated elite. How can ordinary people, lacking even the right to an education, expect equality from their masters? Upon hearing this, Johnny lunged forward, yanking him to his feet, his hollow skull eyes locked with Cliff's. A moment later, the eye of judgment burned Cliff's soul clean, leaving behind a pair of dry and cracked pupils in his eye sockets. Chapter 227: The encounter between Spider-God and Spider Squad. The noise ahead has quieted down. The three little creatures, flying broomsticks, approached stealthily, only to hear the mine, which had been throbbing with gunfire moments earlier, suddenly go silent. It must be that Captain America claiming to be from another parallel universe, Gwen Stacy was certain. After all, this remote town currently only had 3 factions. Then let's go over there, Peter Parker suggested. That Captain America doesn't look like a bad guy. Let's go see what the bad guys are doing. We can turn in our mission back at school. Gwen thought for a moment and nodded. Ned Leeds naturally had no objection. He usually rarely made decisions during operations, as he found it cumbersome. Since his 2 companions were both highly intelligent, he could simply act as a turret and provide damage, though his own IQ was not low. The 3 little creatures lowered their broomsticks and flew forward at a slow speed. In a matter of moments, they reached the mine. "Are you here?" The real Steve Rogers waved at the 3 little creatures. With his current perception, he naturally spotted the 3 little ghosts following him. What are these villains doing? Peter saw the dead and charred bones scattered across the ground, but he wasn't afraid. After this semester's mission, the 3 little ones were no longer the same age group living in the ivory towers contrived by their parents and teachers. They're summoning some evil demon. Steve, who didn't treat the 3 little ones as ordinary children, told them the truth. Thank goodness it's over. Rupert, pierced through the abdomen by a lightsaber, curled up on the ground. Upon hearing Steve's words, he burst into laughter. "Hey, why do you think I chose to inscribe the summoning ritual so deep in the mines?" Steve was startled. He turned decisively, staring at Rupert on the ground, and shouted, "What's here?" Of course, why couldn't the ritual to summon a dimensional demon be performed anywhere else? Why had to go deep into the inaccessible mines? "What's there?" Rupert laughed. "You'll know soon." He wasn't entirely sure. He only guessed that there must be a colony or several colonies of large spiders deep in the mines. He wasn't sure if they would still be there a few years later, and even less sure if the spider god's consciousness could successfully descend upon these giant spiders. Fortunately, he got the answer immediately. As soon as he finished speaking, the mine suddenly began to shake, and earth and rock above them fell. Haha, it worked, Rupert laughed excitedly, ignoring his wounds. The consciousness of the spider god has descended. The Great Weaver is about to appear on Earth. The mine began to shake violently, as if struck by a massive earthquake, and earth and rock continued to collapse. It's over. Run, Gwen shouted, accelerating on her broomstick back the way she came. It's too late. Steve appeared beside her, grabbed her shoulder, and said quickly, "We're too far from the surface. There's no way we can escape." The group, including Steve, remained calm because they knew the captain had a solution. "That won't work either," Gwen said, only halfway through her sentence when she suddenly saw a crimson portal. Beyond it, she saw a valley bustling with construction. "Let's go, take shelter in my base first," Steve invited the three children. With no other choice, the three children lowered their broomsticks and rushed through the portal. The other civilian eunuchs and Johnny Blaze quickly followed by Steve. Rupert, left behind, staring blankly at the portal's disappearance, was stunned. "Wait, Spider God, help!" With a resounding roar, the mine collapsed, and a massive eight-legged spider, emerging from dozens of meters underground, broke through the soil, finally emerging. This spider was larger than any other spider on Earth, measuring over 20 meters from head to tail, with its legs at least 50 meters long when stretched out. Its forehead was densely packed with compound eyes, the two largest gleaming with a hint of human-like aura. These large eyes moved up and down, as if surveying the surrounding desert. "Here," a voice in standard English rang out from the spider's abdomen. "Is this Earth? The Ancient One is dead," like the Beholder, the Spider God, or the Great Weaver, had the same initial thought. Interesting, this summoning involves a human sacrifice. The Spider God clearly sensed the strong scent of blood stained the projected form. It wasn't in his body, but in the totemic power being channeled upon him. He didn't care. After all, no one in this universe had yet acquired the power of the Spider Totem, and there was no Spider-Man to worry about. There was no conflict with a henchman or the double flower red sticks. Besides, even Spider-Man in Marvel's canon had encountered numerous villains who had acquired the spider power. The good and evil of humanity were indifferent to him. Humans killed and ate animals, and giant spiders killed and ate humans. This was simply part of the natural cycle. It seems something truly happened to the Ancient One. Through summoning, the Spider God was able to confirm the Ancient One's current state. If nothing had happened, the Ancient One would not tolerate anyone using human sacrifice to summon his power, or even his consciousness. The power accrued by human sacrifice was not only evil but also powerful. "It's rare that I have a suitable body and a portion of my original body's power, trapped in the Earth 001 inches universe for countless years," he naturally grew bored. In the past, on Earths and other universes, it was rare for his consciousness to descend directly upon them. It was usually only a few lucky individuals who, through chance, received the spider totem power he bestowed upon them. Being able to see Earth in this universe with my own eyes was a rare vacation. Just as he was about to wander around, feeling like a traveler, a red portal suddenly appeared before his eyes. The breath of hell, Steve emerged with his teammates, followed by the three little ones. "Cool," Peter, upon learning the truth, was overjoyed, his eyes lighting up. "We've actually arrived in hell. If you like, you can stay here forever." Gwen Stacy rolled her eyes at him, quickly passing through the portal and returning to Earth, where she breathed a sigh of relief. Although the area controlled by Steve had been transformed to resemble Earth, the endless magma purgatory in the distance still made Gwen feel suffocated. After all, she wasn't a Houston resident who had lost her home and been massacred by the government. Without the deep pain to support her, she couldn't overcome her inherent perception of hell. "Never mind, Aunt May's waiting for me back home for my vacation." Peter glanced back at the legendary hell and walked back to Earth. Ned Leeds, however, felt nothing special and was as relaxed as an ordinary tourist. As soon as the three little ones emerged, they were immediately spotted by the Spider God. The Spider God was stunned, then laughed. "Is this the arrangement of the Web of Fate?" Chapter 228 Spider God, the breath of many old friends. Web of Life and Fate is a mysterious force spanning the multiverse. Originating from the ancient goddess Nes, she combined this power to create the Spider Totem. The Spider Totem is now controlled by the Great Weaver, the Spider God. As the source of his own power, the Spider God naturally places unwavering faith in the Web of Life and Fate. This is his faith. Upon his arrival on Earth, The Spider God immediately encountered the three most common Spider-Men in the multiverse, leading him to suspect the web of fate was orchestrated. Interesting, they possess something. The Spider God paused for a moment before questioning, is this magic? His suspicions were understandable. After all, the magic of the Harry Potter universe and the magic of the Marvel universe are fundamentally different. To the uninitiated, the two manifestations appear similar, but as beings in touch with the essence of the universe, the stark difference is palpable. One is borrowed power, the other is individual power derived from one's own bloodline and magical aptitude. In the multiverse, besides gods like them, born with powers or created by greater deities, are there beings who can gain magical powers through their own bloodline? The Spider God suddenly became intensely curious about the three little creatures. Wow, what a giant spider, Peter exclaimed. Then, noticing their gaze, he was even more surprised. Gwen, Ned, have you noticed? It looks like the giant spider is watching us. You're yelling so loudly, the whole world will notice. Gwen gritted her teeth, wanting to punch him. She decided to teach Peter a lesson during combat class next semester. Ned, a man of few words, immediately drew his wand, staring at the giant spider with wide eyes, a fierce expression of "What are you looking at?" The real Steve Rogers, however, walked towards the giant spider, blocking its view of the three little creatures. This is Earth, not yours. Steve didn't know the Spider God, nor had he heard of the spider totem. He simply sensed a scent of blood from his divine power. This bloody scent wasn't from the giant spider. Ordinary people couldn't see or smell it. Only beings with similar divine powers could sense it. Steve, having inherited the throne of Hell's Lord, naturally possessed the divine power of the dimensional demon. You exude the aura of Hell. The giant spider finally shifted its gaze from the three smaller ones to Steve in front of it. Wow, spiders can speak human language, Peter, standing behind them, exclaimed in amazement. If we are ever killed by the enemy, it'll be because of your big mouth. Gwen, her defense broken, turned and yelled into Peter's ear. Idiot Peter, Peter said, the giant spider across from us is clearly formidable. At this moment, you should be running away quickly and quietly. Yelling and attracting attention, doesn't that mean you're not dying quickly enough? Peter's eardrums vibrated violently from the sound waves, and his eyes went blank. Ned quietly stepped back, avoiding Gwen's sonic assault. Steve ignored the three smaller ones' reactions and cast a wary glance at the giant spider. Yes, I defeated Mephisto and inherited his position. The divine power emanating from the giant spider was no less powerful than his own, clearly unlike Rupert, whom he had easily dispatched earlier. Interesting. You actually managed to defeat that cowardly old man. The Spider God was unaware that Mephisto had been ordered to let him go. After all, the dimensional demon's power came from his territory, and when Steve inherited Mephisto's territory, he also inherited his power. Although Mephisto is the most frequently appearing Lord of Hell in Marvel Comics, Hell also spans the multiverse. Mephisto merely occupied a portion of it, or a dimension of Hell. The throne of Satan remained vacant, and no Lord of Hell had the absolute right to sit on it. As a true multiverse-spanning Spider God, who occupied Earth 001 inches alone, he was unfazed by a mere Lord of Hell. The power he deployed this time was comparable to that of the other Lord. However, Mephisto was always treacherous and cunning, and he unexpectedly fell. But thinking that even the Ancient One on this Earth could be in trouble, the Spider God felt relieved. Something interesting must have happened here. Kid, the Spider God was about to send Steve away when he suddenly turned his head to the northeast. Interesting, very interesting. So many old friends' presences. As he spoke, he raised his abdomen and spit a purple light into the sky. The light was woven with a bright white spider silk, which formed a web in the air. The giant spider quickly pounced on this vast web towards the northeast. Stop! Steve refused to let the demon, whose divine power was so strong that it reeked of blood, escape. He immediately transformed into wings of light and soared into the sky. Stop! The Spider God in the sky launched another luminous web at Steve. The web was so huge that it blocked all of Steve's escape routes. He had no choice but to charge with his lightsaber. However, the web was so resilient that even with Steve's divine power, he couldn't easily break it. The three little creatures on the ground quickly mounted their brooms and rushed southeast towards Phoenix. It's dangerous here. They need to return immediately to where the Porky is, then go back to school. The Spider God, slithering on a giant web in the sky, spotted the three tiny creatures and suddenly shot three small strands of silk at them. The silk was incredibly fast, striking the three creatures in the blink of an eye without impact, leaving them unaware. Since we're here, we can't miss them. After all, these were three individuals who frequently wielded the spider power throughout the multiverse, effectively his regular henchmen. This universe was so strange, it was best to make a mark first. By the time Steve finally broke through the web, the giant spider had already fled. He could only watch it depart before landing reluctantly. Clean up and transfer the remaining survivors to our base. The three creatures could ignore the remaining residents, but Steve couldn't. His presence in this town stemmed from prior intelligence, specifically to rescue and recruit newcomers. These individuals, persecuted by the American elite, could become the comrades Steve needed most. If the remaining residents of the town weren't relocated, Cliff Waters' heirs would undoubtedly use violence to cover up all evidence of their crimes. Steve had seen this happen so many times that he no longer held out hope for the good of these evildoers. He simply hoped there would be fewer of them. The town's residents and supplies were quickly evacuated, leaving the Lone Star Republic's hellish base short of both personnel and supplies. Fortunately, they could move elusively without worrying about a federal blockade of supplies. Chapter 229 The Hot Pot Eating Demon King and Crazy Killian. In places undetected by the American authorities, dimensional demons are being summoned one after another. Some, like the Spider God, possess sentient beings, some can only conceal their consciousness within the souls of their followers, and even more formidable ones have already descended upon this universe and are being hot-potted. Cut more, slice it, cut it into strips. Lin Hao set up a copper pot, said to be over a century old, in the director's lounge of the SWOB Bureau and happily hot-potted the meat. Beside the table sat a miniature octopus, wearing a white chef's hat, one tentacle grasping a kitchen knife, the other resting on a cutting board. Squidward swiftly slashed his blade, severing his own tentacle with a snap. Then, with swift movements, he sliced the meat with every slicing stroke, each slice precisely the same thickness, a testament to his exceptional knife skills. Most miraculously, Squidward's severed tentacle grew back in the blink of an eye. Then, Squidward sliced again. So, do you know how Squidward developed his knife skills? Squidward is the current name of the eye demon Shumagoras, chosen by his master, and no one can refuse. He sliced one tentacle, then another, and placed them respectfully beside Lin Hao. Master, enjoy your meal, come on, pick up your chopsticks, Lin Hao called out to Saber Zhao Yi, Weather Witch Wu Nana, and the rest of the action team. This is truly delicious. You can't usually get it if you want it, cut it freshly. In one word, fresh. Wu Nana glanced at the dignified eye demon transformed into Squidward and felt a tinge of sympathy for its plight. How tragic. Who allowed you to fall into the hands of the great devil? Then, her mouth watered with sympathy, and she quickly picked up her chopsticks, swishing the meat. Honestly, the eye demon's tentacles are 10,000 times more delicious than ordinary octopus, fragrant, smooth, and chewy. Don't be fooled by the lush green skin, the aroma is truly captivating. After undergoing the demonic contract, Lin Hao could now freely control the eye demon's mental contamination, allowing it to manifest or disappear as he pleased. After removing the mental contamination, the tentacles, imbued with demonic power, can bring certain benefits to the user. Of course, Lin Hao didn't want the energy, and later let the eye demon absorb it all. He just wanted the taste. Octopus Brother acted like a competent chef, constantly cutting meat and serving plates, presenting diners with his meticulously prepared meat. Wow, Lin Hao leaned back in his chair, his hands clutching his full stomach. Although there was only one kind of meat, he never tired of it. Most importantly, it was a meat that he could never finish. Not only was it delicious, but it was also an unlimited supply. Isn't this the perfect ingredient? Zhao Yi, standing nearby, had long since collapsed in his chair, but after a few minutes' rest, he struggled to sit up and picked up his chopsticks again. This meat is addictive. Fortunately, it's free and unlimited, otherwise it would have eaten away all the money he'd saved over the years. Report, the door to the lounge opened, and a communications officer from the Spear Bureau pushed through, holding a tablet. Director, unusual energy fluctuations are occurring in multiple locations within the United States. This intelligence comes from the SHIE surveillance satellite. As we all know, every capable nation on Earth possesses its own spy satellites, making reconnaissance technology, along with corresponding camouflage and jamming techniques, a crucial component of a nation's hard power in this new era. America's various intelligence agencies possess numerous spy satellites, constantly monitoring the globe. The SHIE has come from behind, and its current reconnaissance capabilities surpass those of the Americans. Lin Hao took it and glanced through it for a moment, then smiled knowingly. It's no wonder we sent them ammunition, they're finally going to fight. Poor America. Wu Nana shook her head. Her prediction about the Great Demon had proven true. For the past 2 years, America had been in dire straits, plagued by one unpleasant experience after another. Fighting fire with fire is incredibly effective. Shaking her head, she didn't forget to pick up her chopsticks. Have you eaten yet? Lin Hao noticed his colleague delivering the letter, his eyes constantly drifting towards the copper pot. He smiled and dismissed the already full action team members. If you're full, go out and stretch your legs. Let the other colleagues who haven't eaten come in. The Great Devil never eats alone, except for secrets that can't be shared or made public. Those who had already eaten rose and cleared their bowls and chopsticks. Lin Hao lowered his head and drew 2 circles on his tablet, one for Cleveland and the other for Washington. The Great Devil could send 4, but this time it wasn't intentional. It was mainly because Aldrich Killian, in league with Vice President Rodrigo, was planning a grand ceremony. However, Killian, having gained immense strength after completing the ritual at the press conference, mobilized the guests to invite celebrities they knew, and a few days later, another, even larger-scale ritual took place. Although the I-Demon had become Lin Hao's food, bound by the demonic contract, Earth's consciousness did not resist its arrival. The Earth of the Marvel Universe is unique. Though the consciousness of Gaia, the Earth Goddess, remains dormant, it persists. Not only will the Ancient One and Kamar Taj resist the arrival of the demon, but even Earth's own consciousness will resist and even repel them. However, until Gaia's consciousness awakens, this repulsion will only manifest as a passive weakening, effectively placing a limiter on the demon. The beholder now faces no such limitations. Its primary location on Earth allows it to more clearly sense its followers, so, under Lin Hao's instruction, it has channeled another surge of energy. As long as Lin Hao doesn't destroy the thousands of dimensions occupied by the beholder, its power will persist. A mere sacrifice in exchange for power, a drop in the bucket. For this sacrifice, Killian invited several prominent figures from the Cleveland Consortium, including the patriarchs of 2 of its families. The consortium comprises the Eaton, Hannah, Humphrey, and Mather families. This time, Killian has secured 2 of them at once. With his power and political influence vastly increased, Killian has accelerated his plans, no longer content with simply letting soldiers infected with the extraneous virus bomb everywhere. By showing his current strength to the vice president, Killian completely dispelled his previous hesitation and finally decided to go crazy with Killian. That's right, they plan to repeat several successful cases in history, such as Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, John Kennedy and Franklin Roosevelt, who will never be recognized. Rod intends to be the second Truman. Very good, dear Mr. President, it seems that you have not been educated in the previous courses. The American radio and television network was hijacked by hackers again, and the figure of Mandarin appeared in front of the Americans again. There's only one class left, run away and kiss your children goodbye. No one, neither the army nor your iron dog, can save you. See you later. That's all for today. I have to go to work tomorrow morning. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230, 10 Rings vs. Iron Man. In the suburbs of Miami, Florida, a desolate, age-defying mansion appeared. Tony Stark, piloting a new Iron Man suit, descended from the sky. Tony, those signals from Afghanistan are fake. His friend, War Machine, Rhodes, was in constant communication. I know, they're using fake IP addresses. I've got them. Tony stormed into the desolate mansion. Under the guise of the Mandarin, Aldrich Killian used his human bomb to carry out bombings across America. The Ellis cabinet repainted War Machine and renamed it Iron Patriot as a response to the threat. Rhodes, utterly dazed, chased the fake signals across the world, finally seeking help from Tony Stark, a patriot himself. Although busy dealing with Killian's threats, Tony was still unaware of Killian's connection to the Mandarin, believing it was a personal vendetta between him and him. Faced with a national terrorist crisis, Tony couldn't ignore it. Thanks to Killian's forewarnings, Tony's bodyguard, Happy, didn't take the initiative to track down the Mandarin's men and was not seriously injured. Tony didn't provoke the Mandarin by publishing his address to the media, so Killian didn't retaliate by bombing Tony's clifftop mansion. Both sides were preoccupied with what they considered more important matters. Tony joined the search for the Mandarin and quickly discovered Killian's method for hacking into the radio network, easily locating the signal source outside Miami. The mansion was silent, a complete silence. Tony, expecting a tough fight, donned his recently improved suit, only to find that all the henchmen in the mansion had been utterly defeated. Along the way, he saw black suits scattered on the ground, with pools of cold blood beneath them. Tony immediately asked Rod, "Hey, men, have the Secret Service and the military sent anyone to Miami?" "No, I haven't heard." "They'd have let me know if they were moving," Rod hurriedly asked. "What's up? What happened to you?" "Someone got there first." Tony had just entered the main building when his vision suddenly blurred. A man in a tight suit, wielding a dagger, charged at him. His face was painted with Peking opera makeup. The dagger pierced the seam of the armor with remarkable precision. With immense force, the finely crafted blade pierced through the armor's shell, only to become lodged in the complex components. "Shit," Tony retaliated, the shell electrifying, sending a high-voltage current surging back through the dagger. Seeing this, the attacker decisively abandoned the dagger, swiftly pivoting and kicking the armor. The force gleaming from years of training sent the heavy armor stumbling and backing away. "Tony, what's wrong?" Rod, hearing his friend's voice over the comms channel, hurriedly demanded. "There's a strange family," Tony said, amending himself. "Okay, too." Su Wenwu descended the stairs, stepping onto the spiral staircase. He glanced at Tony's armor before turning his gaze to his trusted henchman. "I've been slacking off in my training these past 2 years, he said in Chinese. "Boss, please forgive me. Give me a few minutes, and I'll definitely take him down." The man with the Peking opera mask quickly bowed respectfully, promising with a look of trepidation. Another group of uniformed henchmen, Dragon Trevor Slattery, disguised as the Mandarin, emerged from the upstairs bedroom and followed Su Wenwu. "Hey, who are you?" Tony heard the few Chinese words, which Jarvis had already translated in real time. Seeing Su Wenwu's Asian face, he suddenly understood. "Are you Mandarin's men? Where is he?" Su Wenwu, who had initially been unwilling to pay attention to him, once again turned his gaze and sneered in standard English, "Arrogant Yankees, no one can be my boss yet." As he spoke, he raised his right hand, and the 5 rings on his arm flew out, blasting towards the iron suit. With a bang, the iron suit flew backwards, and the system issued a sharp alarm. "Armor deformed, shield energy loss of 7%. Watford." Tony, in mid-air, steadied himself and raised his arms to fire downwards. High-caliber bullets continued to ripple through the air, shattering the old stone bricks. "The turtle shell is pretty tough." Su Wenwu waved his 10 rings, erecting an energy shield that blocked all the bullets. In an instant, the 5 rings on his right arm dispersed and shot into the sky. 5 rings, like bullets, formed a string and slammed into the Iron Man suit, knocking Tony off his feet in mid-air. Su Wenwu waved his hand, and the 5 rings grew larger, enveloping the Iron Man's suit's limbs and neck before rapidly shrinking. It was like one eye unlocking Red Boy Arnezha enveloping the Dragon King's 3rd prince. "Damn, what is this?" Tony had never seen such a strange weapon before, and he felt immense pressure on his limbs and neck. "The armor is deforming, and the shield is losing energy rapidly," Jarvis warned. Tony refused to surrender. He flicked the laser cutter on his finger and aimed it at the metal ring on his neck, attempting to cut. However, the metal ring flickered blue, resisting the laser. "Sir, no, the opponent's weapon hasn't deformed." "Fuck." Tony could already feel the pressure on his limbs and neck growing. The armor couldn't hold up, and his flesh was being squeezed. At this speed and force, if the armor gave way, his neck would be severed in an instant. On the ground, Su Wenwu maintained his shield, ignoring the weapons fired by Jarvis, who was attempting to evade the enemy, and Tony Stark, whose neck was about to be broken. As a 1,000-year-old monster, he had lost interest in many things outside of the world. Lately, he had been preoccupied with resurrecting his deceased wife, oblivious to changes in the outside world. Dongfang Bei, Iron Man, and aliens were merely fleeting glimpses along his long journey. As someone with the power of immortality, were these destined to perish worth his attention? Had it not been for someone impersonating the 10 Rings gang, he would have been too lazy to come out. Tony Stark, the Iron Man to others, was nothing more than a casually crushed insect on the side of the road in Su Wenwu's eyes. But something strange happened. The 10 rings, which had never malfunctioned in 1,000 years, suddenly failed. 5 of the 5 rings, the defensive force that supported the energy shield, flickered and fell to the ground like a broken light bulb. What? Su Wenwu was stunned. Jarvis seized the opportunity, and the flying steel armor immediately shot a beam of energy towards him. "Boss, be careful," the trusted henchman rushed over to save him without hesitation. Chapter 231 I have been with you for 1,000 years, and only accompanied him once today. Did you make a profit? Haha, this is fucking interesting. Lin Hao was remotely observing the sudden outbreak of battle via the observation satellite aboard the aerospace carrier. Seeing the 10 rings malfunction, Lin Hao wasn't the least bit surprised. He'd even prepared for the Temporal Variance Administration to intervene again, sending Little Devil there. As soon as the pale yellow portal reappeared, Little Devil could infiltrate, allowing Lin Hao to gain access to the Temporal Variance Administration. Last time, he'd been inexperienced. This time, he planned to sneak in. The Temporal Variance Administration's staff were merely ordinary individuals with their memories wiped. Beyond their timelessness, their inability to be affected by time, resulting in a form of immortality, they possessed no combat power, relying solely on their insane equipment. But the editor had placed this agency in a separate dimension outside the multiverse and tasked it with safeguarding the sacred timeline. Beyond utilizing the agency's unique portal technology, no magic, supernatural powers, or divine powers could reach its location. Even the Infinity Stones couldn't function within the Temporal Variance Administration, becoming mere ornaments. The editor had given this organization such high status that Lin Hao couldn't find a way to infiltrate it. How could he possibly confront them if he couldn't even find their location? Seeing Su Wenwu heading to Miami, Lin Hao immediately realized he was likely to run into Tony Stark. Analyzing Su Wenwu's personality, he judged a conflict between the two likely. So, Lin Hao temporarily put aside his thoughts of causing trouble for Su Wenwu, waiting for the outcome of the clash, and for Tony Stark to be killed again, thus attracting intervention from the Temporal Variance Authority. Unexpectedly, the cosmic consciousness had taken on yet another form. This is a divine artifact once used by the Jade Emperor. Lin Hao unabashedly expressed his disdain. In Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Su Wenwu is a fusion of 2 Chinese-American villains from the comics, the Mandarin and Zhang Zhu. He is an original character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and his 10 rings are also original to the film universe. To alleviate the perceived negative reaction of Chinese audiences to the character of the Mandarin, a character clearly tinged with discrimination and smear campaigns, the nefarious Mandarin was transformed into Su Wenwu, a man willing to go mad to save his wife, ultimately repenting at the call of his son. The 10 rings were also changed from the 10 rings of the comic book Mandarin to the Hung Fist Iron Rings. After the film's release, Marvel further refined or revised the character of Shang-Chi and the 10 rings in recent comics to enhance the character and boost box office returns in China and even across East Asia. The 10 rings are believed to be alien artifacts originally from Makhutan, later found their way to Earth, and become the wielders of the Jade Emperor. These 10 rings, along with a hammer, 2 swords, 9 daggers, and 3 staffs, form part of the 5 sets of celestial weaponry. Incidentally, the Jade Emperor in the new comics no longer wears Japanese samurai armor, but the Mingguang armor often seen in Hong Kong films. Clearly, with China's box office boom now the second largest globally, Marvel has finally begun to address past smear campaigns for the sake of box office success. The setting of the SHIELD and the changes to Shang-Chi and the Jade Emperor all stem from this. Only when you're powerful will others take you seriously. However, the usual Hollywood propaganda tactics remain, tinged with incorrigible arrogance and prejudice. This time, Tony Stark remains alive. The bewildered Su Wenwu, like a sycophant abandoned by a scumbag woman, stares blankly at the 5 motionless rings on the ground despite being rescued by his trusted henchmen. Not only those 5, but even the 5 rings that soared into the sky and locked the Iron Man armor have lost their divine power and even grown in size to allow Tony to escape. It's a far cry from the original. It's almost like Stan Lee popping up and pointing at Tony, claiming he's his own son. Thankfully, there's no excessive bias this time. Perhaps the editors above the cosmic consciousness, aware of the importance of Shang-Chi and the 10 rings to box office success, deliberately influenced Tony's thinking. Jarvis, rev the engines. The armor is badly damaged. I need to go back and repair it. Jarvis paused for a moment, a bit puzzled. Shouldn't that be my usual line? As for Ivan Vanko, who was killed last time, I apologize. It's because Russia's economy isn't even as big as a province south of Nanny's. It can't generate box office revenue, so it's naturally a disposable pawn. Tony flew away in the Iron Man suit. Su Wenwu pushed aside his trusted subordinates and walked absent-mindedly towards the 10 unremarkable metal rings. Why? For, isn't it strange? As soon as Tony left, the 10 rings were back in shape. The vanished blue light reappeared, and the 10 rings, lying on the ground like dead fish, suddenly flew back to Su Wenwu's arms, spinning a few times, as if to comfort him. It was like facing a cold, servile goddess. What are you looking at? Wearing it doesn't count. Can't you, a grown man, be a little more generous? I've been with you for 1,000 years, and I've only been with him once today. Do you think you're getting something for nothing? At this moment, Su Wenwu looked like a servile slut. His face was tangled for a long time, but he finally chose to forgive. It's come to this, is it time to kick the goddess out of the house? He could only mentally reassure himself, just this once, just this once. Turning around, Su Wenwu directed his fury at Trevor Slattery, the man impersonating him, and gritted his teeth, skin him alive. As the blade sliced through flesh, the drunken Trevor finally sobered up. Don't kill me, I'm not a Mandarin, I'm just an actor. Someone asked me to play this role. He asked me to impersonate the Mandarin. Trevor, unpretentious, spilled the beans. Killian from AIM, hearing that there was someone behind this, Su Wenwu sneered, you've got a lot of tricks up your sleeve. Since you're here, let's take them down together. With that, he waved his hand. His men quickened their pace, not letting Trevor off the hook just because he'd revealed the truth. The subordinate, his face painted with peaking opera masks, immediately took out his tablet to search for information and reported to Su Wenwu, boss, the AIM company he mentioned is in Cleveland. It's a biotech company that's been causing a lot of trouble lately. As a millennium-old organization, the 10 Rings Gang naturally has a strong intelligence network. They also have numerous branches in the United States and have secretly cultivated even more industries, a strategy that predates even the founding of the United States. Whoever he is, if he gets into my way, he must be killed. Su Wenwu, angry at the goddess, urgently needed someone to vent his anger. A moment later, a private jet took off from a manor and headed north, heading straight for Cleveland. However, Killian was not in Cleveland at the time. He had set his sights on the Iron Patriot and planned a Trojan horse attack. Chapter 232 President Ellis is targeted. Perhaps it was his increased power and confidence that made Aldredge Killian eager to change the world, even temporarily postponing his revenge on Tony Stark. After all, once he completed his plan, gained control of the vice president, who had been appointed in a critical situation, and had the support of the Cleveland Consortium, wouldn't he be able to easily deal with Tony Stark? So, instead of kidnapping his old lover Pepper Potts to threaten Tony, he went straight for Iron Patriot. Sorry, boss, this might take a while, his henchman offered Killian a helpless look. Beside him, a burly man with a cutting machine was slicing through the blue Iron Patriot, attempting to remove the armor from Rhodes. Rhodes had been searching Afghanistan for the Mandarin's signal source. Just as he finished speaking with Tony, he encountered Killian's extremist troopers, was knocked unconscious, and then recaptured. Move aside, I'll do it. Killian removed his suit jacket, approached Iron Patriot, and extended his hand to cover the armor's underbelly. Colonel, my hands are a little hot. Bear with it. His palms suddenly turned a molten red, the temperature rising gradually, heating the alloy armor to a fiery crimson in the blink of an eye. Inside, Rhodes saw the over-temperature warning flashing repeatedly on the system panel, his face grimace. 10 seconds later, the temperature inside the suit reached a steamer-like level, and Rhodes was sweating profusely. Boss, I need to wear it again later, the henchman said carefully. Killian's henchmen were all disabled veterans who had been injected with the extremis virus. Due to the flaws in the virus, they not only risked exploding during the injection process, but also required constant replenishment of the serum afterward. This was how Killian controlled his combat effectiveness. Although it was coercive, almost all of the disabled veterans chosen accepted the injection. After all, how many previously healthy individuals could truly accept the reality of becoming disabled? While the injections carried risks, they were veterans who had seen life and death before, and their current state of disability often made them feel worse than death. Moreover, after being injected with the serum, they not only grow new limbs but also gain extraordinary strength. This proved an irresistible allure for a violent individual accustomed to the battlefield. The heat of his suit intensified, threatening to melt the steel. With no other choice, Rod, who was inside, untied his suit and leaped out. Killian's punch was easily blocked. With a snap, Rod's hand bone snapped under Killian's brute force. Poor Colonel, it seems you need our company's products now, too. Killian shook his head and teased, if you're willing to work for me, I can help you. Gripping back the pain, Rod glared at Killian, whatever you're trying to do, you can't succeed. How could that be? Killian's immense strength had given him immense confidence, keeping him in a good mood lately, even giving him the time to brag. If success hadn't been achieved, how could Mr. Lincoln be sitting on the stone chair at the memorial? And how could Mr. Roosevelt suddenly die on the eve of victory? Colonel, this world is far more cruel than you imagine. You and I both know that the true masters of America have never been those who resort to fancy tricks to win votes. With that, Killian sent his henchman off. Keep an eye on him. These few words left Rhodes dumbfounded. He had never imagined that this madman, after capturing him and seizing his iron armor, would be targeting President Ellis. A desperate soldier approached and dragged Rhodes into a cage, locking him there. With his right hand broken, he was unable to resist. Tony, you must stop him, Rhodes screamed inwardly, placing all his hopes on his friend. Just as Killian was about to put his plan into action, Valentina de La Fontaine, hiding in a New York safe house, finally completed a thorough study of the records concerning the serpent god Set. Countess, this is the largest snake we've ever caught. Her agents had brought an Amazonian anaconda from the South American rainforest via transport plane. It measured 8 meters long and weighed over 200 kilograms. Valentina frowned slightly as she looked at the snake, seemingly dissatisfied with its size. It wasn't thick enough, nor long enough. But there was nothing she could do now. She had to make do. America had been plagued by disasters recently, and the remaining magicians of Kamartaj had been searching for her. If she dared to show herself, she would be dragged into the mirror dimension. Had her agents not gained some power from several demon gods during a previous ritual summoning, Baron Mordo would have likely slain Valentina. Many magicians survived Kamartaj, but few pursued Valentina. Why? Was it because the Ancient One was unpopular? No, it was simply because the other magicians had their own families. Magic knows no borders, but magicians have their own homelands. Those magicians recruited from the outside world into Kamartaj had their own nationalities and families. Revenge against America means antagonizing the most powerful nation in the world. If their appearance is identified by American officials, their families will inevitably suffer retaliation. They don't believe their few dozen magicians alone can destroy America, nor do they have the resolve to massacre hundreds of millions of people. But if they don't kill every American, they will reorganize the government and continue to hunt down the magicians and their families. Only the orphans raised by the Ancient One will pursue them relentlessly. Their only bond is Kamartaj, now destroyed by America. Faced with pressure from Baron Mordo, Valentina can only continue to decipher the records in the magic books, recklessly summoning the power of the demons, even providing them with bodies to descend into consciousness. It's like drinking poison to quench thirst. Begin. Valentina showed a hint of fatigue. She had been under immense pressure these days. The giant python was transported to a specially designated summoning site. The sacrifices for the human sacrifice had already been prepared and were being slaughtered one by the machine, as if using the machine could alleviate some of the sins. Various bloodstains formed a summoning array, and a henchman who was next in line walked in, reciting the spell written in the magic book with deep emotion. Valentina's agents all knew that the person in charge of the sacrifice would get the greatest benefit, so they were all very much looking forward to it, and their emotions were natural and genuine. As the spell was recited, the consciousness of the snake god Set successfully crossed the endless dimensions and descended on the python that was more than 8 meters long. Compared to his huge body, this was not even a pocket-sized miniature version. The originally brown snake pupils turned red due to Set's arrival, and there were even wisps of light floating in the corners of the eyes. It's actually the Earth. Set was stunned, and then laughed. Ha ha ha, Ancient One is dead. Chapter 233. Why is it Washington again? At the airport in Washington, D.C., where Air Force One is docked, President Ellis is boarding. As he ascends the steps, a blue-painted steel suit descends from the sky. Colonel Rhodes, My safety is in your hands, the extremist soldier hiding inside offers a sardonic smile. These disgusting politicians, when they need soldiers, offer them official positions and patriotic praise, but when they go to war, those who die receive no compensation, and those who survive and are injured are left completely uncared for. The extremist virus is expensive, and the Pentagon and the White House can't afford it. These soldiers, left to their own devices, can only earn a chance at wholeness by working for Killian. Today, he finally has a chance for revenge. Because the Mandarin threatened Ellis's safety, and the White House has become a cursed place, Ellis has been working from the Mobile Air Force One. After takeoff, the crew will decide the flight path. The Air Force is only responsible for positioning and monitoring, and cannot predict the aircraft's destination. Due to the strict security measures, this special plane has only experienced accidents in movies. So today, it was in trouble again. The extremist soldier, disguised as Iron Patriot, entered the conference room and shot the Secretary of State. This is because he is fourth in line to the throne, and first in line within the government, and could threaten the vice president's succession. First in line is the vice president, second is the Speaker of the House, third is the president pro tempore of the Senate, and fourth is the Secretary of State. This order of succession is followed when the president is unable to perform his duties. This is the Presidential Succession Act signed by Truman in 1947. Isn't it a bit of black humor? Seeing the Iron Patriot open fire, the Secret Service agents immediately retaliated, and the two sides engaged in a fierce fight in the plane. Unsurprisingly, a hole was blown in the plane. The extremist soldier stuffed Ellis into the iron suit and jumped out of the hole using a parachute. Due to Su Wenwu's intrusion, Tony Stark severed communication with Rhodes. Unaware of Killian's true intentions, he was now deep in his West Coast clifftop villa, renovating his armor, unaware of what was happening outside. Air Force One was destroyed, and no one survived except Ellis, who was abducted. Ellis made his way back to Washington, landing in the tallest building closest to the White House. The White House, previously destroyed by the fierce battle between Thor and the Destroyer armor, has been rebuilt. The same shape, the same colors, even a deliberately aged finish. After months of siege, the White House reappeared before the eyes of Americans and the world. Despite external skepticism, even unnamed Eastern powers releasing satellite images, as long as American officials insisted it was routine repairs, America's reputation remained intact. Unfortunately, ever since Dongfang Bubei's success, troublemakers around the world have set their sights on the White House and the surrounding prime location. The Pope of the Eyes cult, the future Emperor of America, couldn't possibly be outmatched by a wily Dongfang Bubei, could he? The exorcism sword technique was no secret in America. As the East and West factories expanded, more and more people became aware of the saying, to master this skill, one must first castrate oneself. This was also the reason why wealthy Americans were reluctant to accept this extraordinary power. Otherwise, the knowledge that this internal energy could strengthen the body and prolong life, without any side effects, would have long been known throughout the American upper class. So, Killian deliberately chose to execute Ellis on the high-rise building directly opposite the White House. He had also intended to try the White House rooftop, but since Dongfang Bubei's arrival, it had been coated with an extremely low-friction coating, making even a fly slippery. Coupled with the tight security, Killian, lacking strength, had to settle for the next best option. "Who are you?" Ellis stared at the blonde Killian after the Iron Man armor's visor opened. "Killian, old wretch Killian," Killian replied politely. His men had already hoisted the iron suit onto the cables, barrels of oil arranged beneath it. "What are you trying to do?" Ellis panicked. "Have you heard of the elephant graveyard?" Killian, with the usual villainous urge to confide, patiently explained. 2 months ago, Lox's oil tanker spilled 1 million gallons of crude oil in Pensacola. Thanks to you, no one was held legally responsible. So, you're from Pensacola? You want revenge?" Ellis tried to shake himself, but found the iron suit locked shut. He didn't even have the strength to move. Although Killian fancied himself a powerful figure, Ellis, preoccupied with his affairs, didn't recognize him. Hearing this question, Killian was stunned for a moment, then smiled and shook his head. No, it has nothing to do with that. I just found a random excuse to get on TV, a reason to kill you." Ellis was completely shocked and shouted, "Are you crazy? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what will happen to you? America will not let you go." Oh, maybe I'll be put on the electric chair without any trial, Killian scoffed. Like John Wilkes Booth, or maybe I'll become an urban legend, like Mr. Roosevelt's personal physician who never existed. Madman, Ellis cursed. You're a lunatic. Killian ignored the curse and ordered his men to bring the live broadcast equipment. This time, he didn't plan to film it in advance, opting for a live broadcast. By now, he knew that the manor outside Miami had lost contact, but he didn't care. Even if the Mandarin was captured, so what? As long as this was done, the Cleveland Consortium and the followers he had recently expanded would support him. Who would believe the words of a terrorist and drug addict? Vice President Rodriguez will succeed according to procedure, and Killian will become the Emperor of America. The signal quickly cut in, and the National Broadcasting Network was hacked again. This time, Americans saw a familiar face on TV. Oh my God, what's going on? Director, big news, give it to me quickly. Only then did they realize that they didn't need interruption permission at all, as all stations were broadcasting live. Although the Mandarin had lost contact, Killian still played a video he had recorded in advance. 2 months ago, in Pensacola, in the northwest corner of Florida, a tanker from the Lox Oil Company dumped 1 million gallons of crude oil. I like Viking funerals very much, the blazing fire that cleanses a lifetime of sins so that the soul can ascend to heaven, although, the Vikings didn't believe in Christianity, sir. Emergency. Jarvis projected the screen directly in front of Tony, who was working hard. Tony was stunned and asked quickly, "Where's this?" Jarvis immediately replied, "By comparing the surrounding environment, a White House has appeared. Obviously, this is in Washington." "Why is it Washington again?" Tony's mouth twitched, and he had the urge to hug his face and smile bitterly. "Why is Washington chosen every time? Can't we change the place? Take all the spare parts boxes and energy boxes, Iron Man soared into the sky." Killian had no idea how many existences he would attract this time. Sleep. Chapter 234, All Parties Gathered. New York, Queens. "Peter, you're about to wake up, right? It's your first day home from school. Let's celebrate with dinner," Aunt May called downstairs. "What do you want?" "I'll get it for you at the supermarket." Peter Parker had finished his first semester and, along with 2 friends, had successfully completed their semester assignments, winning first place in the House Cup competition and returning home with a generous reward. "Damn, it won't go away." Peter, standing shirtless in front of the mirror, saw a red spider pattern appear on his chest. No matter how much he rubbed, it wouldn't go away. Not even a repair spell could restore it to its original state. "Hey, do I have to remind you it's already afternoon?" Aunt May pushed open the door to find a muscular man, over 5 feet 4 inches tall, in the room. "What are you?" Peter quickly grabbed the clothes on the side of the bed, covering his chest with them, and turned around. "Wow, Peter," Aunt May exclaimed in surprise, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes sparkling. "I can't believe you've grown taller and stronger in 6 months." "I didn't even notice in the wee hours." Peter returned to New York via Portkey in the wee hours of the morning and headed straight home. Since Hogwarts dismissed students at 9 a.m. London time, it was only 4 a.m. New York time, so Aunt May, already sound asleep, only heard Peter open the door. She glanced briefly before returning to rest. Her nephew had grown into a man, a look you wouldn't have guessed from his clothes. Aunt May entered the house, a sense of relief welling up in her heart. "Aunt May, could you please step out for a moment?" Peter reluctantly clutched his chest. He didn't want Aunt May to worry, not wanting her to see the spider pattern on his chest. Okay, Peter's a man now," Aunt May said happily, turning and leaving, sighing as she left. Magic is amazing. It can make children grow so fast. Peter knew the changes in his body weren't caused by Hogwarts. While the school meals and exercise had made all the children grow taller, it was a gradual process, not a sudden jump. Spider. That giant spider. Realizing this, Peter quickly dressed and rushed downstairs. Just as he reached the phone, it rang. "Peter, grab your broomsticks and head north," Gwen Stacy said urgently. "Huh?" Peter was stunned. He didn't have the AI Jarvis at home, just a 10-year-old color TV that Aunt May had left on all morning so as not to disturb his sleep. In fact, Aunt May, usually busy with work, was rarely home during the day, only catching up on TV shows at night. Today, because her nephew had unexpectedly returned, she had taken a day off. So, Peter, who had been adjusting to the jet lag and struggling with the changes in his body, hadn't seen the hijacked TV show, unaware of what was happening in Washington. However, after hearing Gwen's words, and knowing he needed to confirm the spider pattern on his chest with his companions, he immediately ran back to his bedroom and grabbed one of the College Cup rewards, a Nimbus 2010 broomstick. Then, he dashed out the upstairs window. As he soared into the air, Peter spotted two other figures flying north from the next block and hurried to catch up. "Gwen, Ned," Peter demanded after they reunited. "Do you have any of those, the spider pattern, right here?" Ned Leeds pointed to his chest. His once chubby flesh had shrunk, becoming leaner and taller, and his height had surpassed 1.5 meters. Peter looked at Gwen again, who nodded silently. Gwen was now about the same height as Peter. She didn't look as muscular, but her figure was more defined, especially in her bust and underbust. The three little ones, only 11 or 12, had entered puberty early. That giant spider must have been responsible. Peter gritted his teeth. Although they appeared to be innocuous and even benefited, the power of this monster still made them wary. Preconceived notions led the three children to regard Hogwarts magic as legitimate. Besides, they were already superhumans, no longer needing the powers bestowed by monsters. "Let's find a way to contact the school, or buy tickets to England, and ask the principal for help in removing this pattern," Peter quickly suggested. "Never mind that. Something big has happened in Washington. I need to go check it out first," Gwen then informed her two friends of the unfolding events. After such a devastating incident, Chief George, now a high-ranking official in the NYPD, was naturally summoned by his superiors. Gwen, who had previously been content to silently wish her father well at home, but now, possessing superhuman abilities, she was eager to help. "I'm going to help my dad." What are you talking about?" Ned spoke up. "We're a team." "Yes, it's time for the Ram Street Superhero Squad to take the stage." Peter, equally eager, looked eager. Thus, three young children, both capable and determined to become superheroes, stepped onto the stage prematurely. Unfortunately, the concept of superhero was about to change for the better. Meanwhile, Su Wenwu, who had arrived in Cleveland, failed to find Aldredge Killian at AIM, but instead noticed the image of the so-called Mandarin appearing on television again. "That stinky rat really knows how to run." Impatient to run back to the private airport, Su Wenwu soared into the sky, heading east towards Washington. The 10 rings grant their wearer various abilities, including superhuman strength, endurance, speed, and flight. 2 rings were attached to each hand and foot, and 2 more were attached to the waist. Blue light emitted jets of air backward, acting like the engines of the Iron Man suit, providing propulsion while also creating a protective shield to block attacks and turbulence. The 10 rings' flight speed was no slower than the Iron Man suit's. After all, it was a celestial suit used by the Celestial Court. In another New York district, Valentina de Lafontaine had also received orders from her financial backers and was dispatching all of her superpowered henchmen to Washington to help. Killian's public execution was carried out under the guise of the Mandarin, the Cleveland Consortium, not to mention being unaware of Killian's actions, even if they knew, would have to maintain a facade. "This time, America will never again become a laughingstock," Valentina determinedly urged her men aboard the transport plane. She hadn't forgotten to bring along the giant python, forcibly injected with a massive dose of anesthetic. If things got out of control, this snake, inhabited by the consciousness of the serpent god Set, would be a valuable asset. The spider god, traveling northeast from Arizona in the southwest, had been searching for old friends following the divine energy fluctuations. He discovered that these auras were all heading towards Washington, and, intrigued, decided to check it out. With a gathering of all parties, Washington once again became the focus of the world. Chapter 235 Public Execution of the American Leader. SWORD, Helicarrier, Director's Office. Lin Hao contacted Valentina de Lafontaine, Deputy Director of the United States, and stated solemnly, according to the resolution of the World Security Council, if a member state encounters a crisis caused by supernatural forces or aliens, SWORD can provide assistance. No, America is capable of resolving the crisis on its own. Valentina flatly refused, emphasizing, besides, this is just a terrorist attack. Their dignity as the world's dominant power prevented them from asking for assistance. Besides, any supernatural event presented an opportunity. As long as the problem was resolved, the fruits of their labor could be enjoyed. Who would be willing to share the fruits of their labor? Okay, then, good luck to you, Lin Hao's face was filled with sincerity. The office screens were broadcasting live footage of the Mandarin's public execution and a live broadcast from the InSight satellite. Since everyone had been tired of eating, Squidward didn't practice his swordsmanship this time. He stared at the screen with one eye, recognizing Aldredge Killian as the one who had been summoning him so often recently. Master, the eye demon turned his massive head towards Lin Hao. You want to go out and play too? Lin Hao asked with a smile. Can I? The mighty eye demon said weakly. Don't worry, it's not your turn yet. The great devil waved his hand. The big names deserve the final show. As a great devil with over a decade of experience, Lin Hao knew the secrets of harvesting the grudges of living beings. How could he just go all out right away? He had to proceed step by step, repeatedly giving people hope, and finally, with a final, decisive blow. In Washington, the area around the White House was already in turmoil. The Secret Service had already locked onto the location from the live feed and were rushing over to try to save poor Mr. Ellis. After satisfying the villain's desire to vent, Killian wasted no time and threw a lit lighter from behind the camera. The flames ignited the gasoline barrel. With a bang, the gasoline exploded, and flames shot into the sky, burning Ellis trapped within the Iron Patriot. Killian waved his hand, and his men quickly retreated, leaving only a single camera faithfully broadcasting the footage. Ellis felt the heat from his heated steel armor, and he screamed, unable to endure it any longer. At that moment, everyone watching on television was stunned. They were witnessing the first ever public execution of an American president. The last time such an event occurred in the Western world was probably when the French publicly executed Louis V. Oh my God, am I dreaming? This can't be real. Has America become so weak? The head of state being publicly executed in front of the entire world was a huge blow to the American people's faith. The Americans, who once held the world in awe, felt as if they were dreaming. How could this happen? Wasn't America the most powerful nation in the world? Even with the recent turmoil, they were still the great Americans. But now, their faces were being humiliated. If a nation's leader can be easily killed, what are the little people like them? Ambitiously obsessed with becoming the Emperor of America, Killian overlooked the enormous impact this would have on the American people. If he succeeded, the aura America had painstakingly cultivated would be shattered. A large number of capital immigrants would likely flee, and ordinary people would completely abandon their already limited trust in the federal government. Chaos within America would then deepen. Citizens would frantically hoard supplies and weapons, believing that since the federal government couldn't even protect its leader, it couldn't protect them either, leaving them to rely on themselves. Killian had fallen into the same arrogant trap as the American elite eagle. He had no regard for the little people, nor for their reactions, believing he could conquer everything with sheer force. Tony Stark, flying from Los Angeles to Washington, gnashed his teeth in anger as he watched the live stream from Jarvis. Damn you bastard. Whoever you are, I'll tear you apart. Thanks to Su Wenwu's intrusion, Tony still doesn't know the connection between Killian and the Mandarin. But he clearly saw the so-called Mandarin being dragged down the stairs like a dead dog by the man who appeared to be Chinese. The man, who appeared to be Chinese, possessed uncanny powers and nearly killed him. Judging by his demeanor, he was a formidable figure and likely wouldn't spare the Mandarin's life. Since the so-called Mandarin was dead, who was this guy now? This suggests there must be a mysterious group behind the Mandarin. The Iron Man's suit was fast, but the distance from the west coast to the east coast was far from short. Given the current speed and location of the various forces, Su Wenwu, who had departed from Cleveland, was faster than Tony. The first forces to arrive in Washington were Valentina de LaFontaine and her henchmen, who had departed from the northern suburbs of New York. Valentina, a former SHIELD member, possessed the blueprints for the Quinjet. She modified its design and built her own transport plane, which rivaled the Quinjet's performance. Just as Killian reached the lower floor, intending to quietly escape before the Secret Service surrounded him, several transport planes suddenly appeared above the high-rise building, spraying fire extinguisher on the rooftop. What's going on? Killian, who had already reached the lower floor, looked up, his brow furrowed. The military? So fast this time. He knew that executing Ellis in the building directly across from the White House would inevitably attract rescuers, but after calculating the reaction speed of the Secret Service and the military, Killian believed he had time not only to evacuate but also to incinerate Ellis. Little did he know that the American High Command also wielded Valentina's extraordinary power. He knew that there was a powerful shield in the past, but it had been abolished a few months ago. and the organization that inherited S.H.I.E.L.D. was jointly owned by the 5 major powers. It was impossible for the United States to ask other countries to intervene and help when something like this happened, which would only make people laugh. The 2 family patriarchs of the Cleveland Consortium, who had become believers of the eye gaze cult, knew about the existence of Valentina. The problem is, the Pope didn't ask. If you didn't ask, how could we tell you in advance? The rapid appearance of Valentina's party disrupted Killian's plan, and it was not certain that Ellis would be burned to death in this short time. Damn it, I can't let anyone ruin my plan. Killian was about to rush up to the high-rise building to add fuel to the fire. But he saw several transport planes in the sky suddenly rolling around with lens-like images. I wonder if he will go into the Black Room. Chapter 236 Opening Debut, Desperate Warrior vs 10 Rings. A transport plane was dragged into the mirror dimension by a tumbling mirror, interrupting the spraying of the fire extinguisher. Baron Mordo, ever intent on Valentina, and the vengeful Camartage mages followed her like ghosts, ready to take revenge upon her at any opportunity. Baron Mordo cared nothing for Ellis's life or death, and the American higher-ranking officials were already enemies of Camartage. It was a good thing they didn't rush in to finish off the enemy, but how could they expect them to put out the fire and save lives? In the mirror dimension, a war raged again. Since returning from Camartage, Valentina's organization had been under relentless attack from the remnants of Camartage. Damn it, we're done, Valentina gritted her teeth. Their timing was impeccable, interrupting them just as they were about to rescue Ellis. The fire on the top floor of the building hadn't been extinguished yet. Even if the fire didn't kill her, Ellis would surely suffocate. America's reputation was ultimately lost. Attack at all costs. The woman, utterly mad, seemed to have lost her mind, commanding fire at several mages on Baron Mordo's side. The fierce barrage only shattered a few mirrors. The mages were nowhere in sight. Get off the plane. Close combat. Agents, endowed with the various superpowers by demons from different dimensions, leaped from the planes. Some used their levitation to fly directly towards the mages, while others, with their agility, sprinted across shifting walls, attempting to close the distance. The mages, naturally, would not allow them to succeed, constantly creating trouble, but refusing to open the portal to the outside world. Despite possessing various superpowers, the agents, unacquainted with the magic of the mirror dimension, could only act recklessly, relying on their superior numbers to repeatedly assault a mage's defenses. Each time, they suffered heavy casualties, forcing the mages to abandon their efforts to maintain the mirror dimension. Valentina's side achieved success, killing 2 mages, but this forced the mages, with their limited numbers and inability to replenish, to exercise even greater caution. The battle continued within the mirror dimension. Outside, the flames raged on the tall building. Ellis had lost the strength to scream and passed out, his entire body akin to being steamed. He sweated profusely and dehydrated, his iron armor heated to a crimson glow, on the verge of collapse. Finally, another figure flew over from the sky. However, this figure merely glanced at the torched building, seeing no one but the suspended figure. He ignored it and continued his search for Aldredge Killian. The magicians of Camartage cared little for the life or death of the American leader, and Su Wenwu, who had lived for 1,000 years, cared even less. He had come solely to find Killian and execute the Cent who had dared to impersonate the leader of the 10 Rings. He soon spotted 2 convoys on the ground, one approaching from the White House, the other rapidly fleeing in the opposite direction. While Su Wenwu didn't care about Ellis's life or death, that didn't mean he didn't know the identity of the burning figure, let alone the location of the White House. The convoy from the White House certainly didn't contain the person he was looking for. So, he flew towards another convoy. A moment later, Su Wenwu soared above the convoy, using the metal rings on his feet and waist for propulsion. He levitated, then extended his hands and fired 2 rings. The blasted metal rings moved faster than heavy artillery and possessed inherent strength, capable of piercing solid structures like stone and most metals, including those imbued with magical powers. The sudden attack shattered Killian's convoy, with several vehicles dismembered or even exploding. "Who's that?" Killian leaped from the melted and deformed metal of the wrecked cars. The cracks on his body were rapidly repaired by the swirling lava. Having once again gained the power of the Eye Demon, Killian's healing abilities continued to increase, granting him even greater strength and speed. Interesting. No wonder they dared to impersonate the 10 Rings gang to cause trouble. Floating in the sky, Su Wenwu glanced at the extremist soldiers who continued to emerge from the wrecked cars and sneered. The rollover and even the explosion had little effect on the desperate soldiers. They melted through the deformed metal and slowly emerged, undeterred by the flames. Since Su Wenwu spoke in Chinese, Killian didn't understand, so he simply glared angrily at the Asian man floating in the air. Looking for death, Killian, now vastly stronger, didn't care who the man was. Furthermore, he had no good feelings towards Asians. Although Lin Hao had saved him 10 years ago, he now felt that selling his research for $100,000 was a huge loss. He opened his large eyes and fired a crimson beam of heat energy at Su Wenwu. With a wave of his right hand, 2 rings formed an energy shield, blocking the heat beam. With a flick of his left hand, 2 rings shot towards Killian. The 10 rings were incredibly fast, with their inherent turning and tracking abilities. Although Killian instinctively dodged, he was still crushed halfway. Killian's greatly enhanced healing abilities allowed him to regenerate both his head and body at a far faster rate than before. Without his heart, his body could only be completely destroyed with a powerful burst of energy. Su Wenwu, manipulating his 2 rings, pursued him for a while, only to see him recover after being shattered. He frowned. Meanwhile, the other desperate soldiers were also busy, opening their mouths and spewing flames at Su Wenwu in the air. Killian was their boss, the source of their future life-saving serum, and they couldn't afford to slack off. Faced with these seemingly powerful, yet ineffective, flames, Su Wenwu couldn't maintain his composure and flowed, forcing him to move to avoid them. Would that mean he was simply passively accepting the attack? Would the leader of the 10 Rings gang lose face if they saw him? As Su Wenwu began to move, the desperate soldiers' accuracy plummeted. Lacking ranged attack capabilities, they could only find various objects to hurl into the air. Annoying flies, Su Wenwu finally landed, retracted the metal rings from his legs and waist, and unleashed them all at once, blasting the surrounding desperate soldiers. Unable to dodge, the desperate soldiers lacked the agility to do so and could only passively withstand the blows. Some were struck in the arms and legs, temporarily incapacitated, while others were struck in the chest, their fragile hearts shattered by the immense force, completely destroyed. Su Wenwu glanced at them and shook his hands again. The 10 rings that were about to fly back turned and blasted the desperate soldiers again, this time aiming for their hearts. Stop, Killian. Once again charging, unleashed a 3000°C heat beam at Su Wenwu. Seeing this, Su Wenwu retracted 2 rings to block the heat beam. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237 Mr. Ellis passed away. As Su Wenwu and Killian and the others engaged in a battle, the Secret Service finally arrived at the base of the building, now reduced to blaze. Hurry, the president is up there. The group squeezed into the elevator and suddenly realized something. Shit, the elevator's been vandalized. Killian had calculated the time. As he aimed his live camera at the White House, he threw his lighter and took his men down the elevator. By then, the fire on the top floor was mild and hadn't yet spread to the floors below. As the elevator descended, Killian had his extremist soldiers destroy the cable, precisely to increase the Secret Service's time to ascend. By the time they had climbed the 90-plus floors, Ellis had already been reduced to a charred mess. Helicopter, are they here yet? The White House area had a fleet of helicopters used for firefighting and even emergency evacuations. VIPs definitely wouldn't use helicopters. If the White House were in danger, it would mean the enemy had already attacked the surrounding area. Taking a helicopter would simply make them easy targets for enemy rockets. The VIPs would descend directly into the fully enclosed express train via an elevator, passing through a section of the Great Wall underground before arriving on an unknown section of track. As the Secret Service agents departed by car, a fleet of helicopters took off, their speed increasing. They had already reached a rooftop and were extinguishing the fire. However, the fire had already engulfed several floors above, and the blazing oil was causing even the steel to warp. Though Ellis was hiding inside the Iron Patriot, his suit was already ablaze. Killian had purposely locked Ellis inside the suit, not to protect him but simply to make him suffer more, to enjoy the taste of the oven before being burned alive. As time wore on, the mood of all the Secret Service agents sunk to the bottom. They had already realized the harsh reality, Yet they were still engaged in a futile, perhaps superficial, effort. In the sky to the south, 3 young men, arriving on broomsticks, didn't fly towards the burning building, but instead hovered over other parts of the city. "Gwen, why aren't you going over there?" "Aren't we here to save the president?" Peter Parker asked, puzzled. "We're here to rescue people, but not to rescue any particular individual. We're here to get the surrounding residents away as quickly as possible," Gwen Stacy emphasized. "What do you mean?" Peter, though physically grown, clearly lacked the depth of thought of the precocious Gwen. "I don't have time to explain this to you right now," Gwen said sternly, adopting the demeanor of a captain. "Ned, block the main road leading to the White House with a fiery blaze." "Huh?" Even Ned was taken aback. "Was it necessary to go to such lengths?" "We'll probably be convicted of arson, don't worry, the authorities wouldn't dare offend Hogwarts right now," Gwen said confidently. "Not only will we not be convicted, they'll even award us medals." "You said so, then I'll do it." Ned decisively drew his wand and flew towards the distant street corner, clearly eager to try. The 3 little ones' actions had a certain effect, because the reckless young Americans, eager to see the chaos unfold around the White House, rushed over excitedly to watch. After all, this incident was just a terrorist act. They'd seen even the perverted Dongfang Bubei and the magical aliens before. So what were these mere terrorists? Only when the main road was blocked by a raging fiery curse did they curse and search for a new route. The crowd dispersed, and time was lost. Naturally, a new incident occurred at the scene. Tony Stark was still on his way, but above the flame-lit high-rise building, where several transport planes had just been, the sky suddenly cracked into pieces of mirrored glass, and an 8-meter-long python roared down from the sky. "The Ancient One is dead, and a bunch of brats still want to trap me," the serpent god said, shattered the mirror dimension with a brute force. The mirror dimension wasn't unbreakable. In the movie, the mirror dimension that Stephen Strange had just opened during his battle with Thanos on Titan was shattered by Thanos using the Power Stone. Seizing the opportunity to break through the mirror dimension, Valentina de La Fontaine leaped down with nearly half of her men, dead or wounded, oblivious to the raging flames below. Their transport plane was once again scrapped, leaving only the superpowered agents surviving. It wasn't that technology was ineffective against magic, it was simply that in the ever-changing mirror dimension, the pilot's control couldn't keep up with the magician's thinking, and they wouldn't last long before the plane and the crew were destroyed. Tanks and armored vehicles that couldn't fly would be even worse off after entering the mirror dimension. A simple plane shift could send these giant iron boxes plummeting into the abyss, doomed. Valentina, having performed so many ritual summons, naturally acquired some superpowers, such as flight, super strength, and super speed. To navigate the mirror dimension, flight or levitation became the primary means of survival. After emerging from the mirror dimension, Valentina's team was suspended in midair. Most of the flying agents reached out to grab the few who couldn't fly, quickly moving away from the flames. The steel cables seen earlier were now ablaze, and the iron armor tied to them had been burned into a massive, red-hot lump. Unless the Hulk or a transcendent with limitless self-healing abilities was inside, there was no chance of survival. Valentina's face was very dark. She failed again. But the next moment, her face became even darker. Because the big python that fell from the sky swung its tail and threw the obstructing steel cables and the big red iron lump away, hitting a nearby helicopter that was doing firefighting. With a boom, the helicopter exploded into a ball of fire. Poor Ellis, after he died, his body was blown up. Originally, he could still have a complete body, but now, he might not even be able to find a broken bone. Run, Valentina was the first to fly away. The flames on the high-rise building did not hurt Seth. A faint red light was emitting from the python's body. This red light was like an energy shield, isolating the flames. Seeing the group of little bugs running away, Seth immediately opened his mouth and spit out red lightning, hitting the agents in the air, completely ignoring the fact that his followers were among them. Immediately, several agents were blown into pieces by the red lightning. Earlier, Valentina had injected Seth with an overdose of anesthetics just as his consciousness had descended into the python. Marvel's gods and demons have a strange setting, except for Eternity, who is explicitly declared invulnerable to physical attack. No other deity, no matter how powerful, is immune to all poisons. Every now and then, an editor would come up with a new idea, dragging a once important deity out to expose a mere human-developed biological toxin. Even the might of Thor or the blessing of Mjolnir couldn't stop a minor cancer, and Thor's girlfriend died. Thor didn't even consider searching for cancer-fighting technology on a technologically advanced planet. Even the snake god said himself wasn't immune to all toxins, let alone the mere inhabitant of his consciousness. To control the python, Valentina had a team of professional biologists and pharmacists develop a specialized nerve anesthetic, and she acted decisively the moment the python spoke in English. Until just now in the mirror dimension, the transport plane was driven by the pilot and crashed into the high-rise building that suddenly grew above his head. The explosion destroyed the box containing the python and burned Seth's consciousness. I was too tired last night and fell asleep halfway through writing. Chapter 238 The Big Python That Furies the Fire. Atop a high-rise building transformed into Torch, a giant python, inhabited by a serpent god's consciousness, dispatched several nasty bugs before twisting itself around and clinging to the building's outer wall. In this serpentine motion, it wriggled its way down the building. The sudden appearance of the python had already alerted the Secret Service. Seeing the snake's brazen actions of flinging President Ellis away, blowing up a helicopter, and then blasting lightning to pursue government agents, it was clearly an enemy. Coincidentally, the Secret Service agents were desperate to demonstrate their abilities. Capture the president's killer. The Secret Service, in conjunction with the CIA, FBI, and military, had spent countless hours unsuccessfully trying to pinpoint the Mandarin's whereabouts. However, the president's killer needed to be apprehended swiftly, otherwise it would only expose the incompetence of these powerful American institutions. While the snake hadn't set the fire, as the final creature that flung Ellis away, it was also a contributing factor. They could assert that Mr. Ellis wasn't killed by the fire, but by the final explosion. In this case, the elusive Mandarin could be considered an accomplice at best, and they could use the snake's corpse as a cover. Mandarin was just a mere terrorist. How could he compare to a talking, transcendental being? With such a powerful killer responsible for President Ellis's death, what hope did the people have? The Secret Service director, as if seeing a lifeline, urged his agents to attack the giant python. His safety depended on it. As for victory, it was a joke, it was just a mere. With a crackling, red lightning erupted from the python's mouth, exploding bodies, vehicles, buildings, and roads. In a single round, the surrounding Secret Service agents were reduced to a pile of rotting flesh, a mere reminder of their existence. Even the eunuchs of the East Depot, under the Secret Service's control, were no match for the red lightning. Are you kidding? The Secret Service director, hiding in a distant command vehicle, was stunned. He then roared in despair, "Heavy weapons, I want heavy weapons." With a roar, the remaining vehicles were blasted apart by the python's lightning. After clearing away the annoying flies, the python crawled in the direction away from the White House, sensing two familiar auras. 2 blocks away, the battle between Su Wenwu and Killian continued. Killian's desperate soldiers had been shattered one by the 10 rings, leaving him alone. The healing power granted to Killian by the Eye Demon had allowed him to survive the 10 rings bombardment several times. After several rounds of this, Su Wenwu grew exasperated. This indestructible bug had exhausted all his patience. "I'll finish you in one move." Su Wenwu retracted the 10 rings to his side. 10 metal rings formed a string and began to spin rapidly. Blue light converged into a shining point at the center of each ring, eventually connecting all 10 points into a line. A huge wave of energy converged around this line. Killian, having just recovered, saw his opponent's meticulously prepared moves and felt a pang of fear. Fuck. Doesn't this yellow monkey ever tire? Despite possessing powerful healing abilities, Killian was still a human being, constantly draining his physical and mental energy. Su Wenwu, however, was utilizing the inherent power of the 10 rings. As a divine artifact granting immortality, the energy contained within the 10 rings might not be infinite, but its magnitude was undoubtedly far beyond the capabilities of human technology. For example, even if all the power plants on Earth were put together and operated at full capacity for hundreds of years, the energy required for a spacecraft to make a single space jump might not be enough. Therefore, Su Wenwu appeared effortless and tireless in the battle. In the blink of an eye, Su Wenwu unleashed his ultimate move, a beam of blue energy radiating from the rapidly spinning 10 rings. At that moment, the 10 rings resembled a cannon. Facing this blow, Killian sensed the immense danger and made the most effective decision in the fleeting moment. With a bang, Killian chose to self-destruct. The blue beam ultimately struck only a fragmented patch of magma, While vaporizing all the magma in its path, it still caused most of Killian's tissue to reassemble like flowing water. "Kid, your energy cannon isn't much use against this kind of opponent," teased the serpent god Set, who leaped from behind. "You need to switch to freezing abilities." Su Wenwu turned and saw a giant python suddenly emerge from a distance, speaking English. He quickly distanced himself. "Don't be nervous. You have a familiar aura," a hint of amusement shone in the python's eyes. "It's a pity my true form isn't on Earth. Eating you wouldn't help." Set was one of the first of the old gods to emerge on Earth, and he was also the culprit behind the old gods devouring each other. Later, his father and his sister had an affair, giving birth to Adam, a brother and nephew. He ended the dark age of the old gods through force. Unfortunately, Adam fell into the form of the God-Eater and began devouring other ancient gods. He was ultimately slain by Set's father and sister, and cast into the sun, obliterating his consciousness. Adam's remaining energy gave rise to the new age of gods on Earth, with the Jade Emperor being one of these new gods. Therefore, in the Marvel Universe, the Jade Emperor is considered the great-nephew or great-nephew of the serpent god Set, depending on the paternal or maternal line. While the 10 rings weren't formed from the Jade Emperor's energy, they had been under his control for years, naturally imbued with his divine power, which Set now sensed. As Set had stated, his true form was far from Earth, and even if he had swallowed the 10 rings, he wouldn't be able to transmit the acquired power back. Furthermore, the power of this inhabitant was modest, and it wasn't certain it could defeat the 10 rings. The Ancient One had finally died, and she still wanted to enjoy a leisurely stroll around Earth. If Set felt a sense of familiarity with the 10 rings, then the aura of the eye demon emanating from Killian filled him with profound repulsion. "It sure smells like a giant eyeball, even those in the same league are enemies." Furthermore, the eye demon occupies more dimensions than the serpent god and is even more powerful. It even ruled Earth a billion years after Set was forced to flee, effectively completing what Set had failed to achieve. This displeased Set, who called himself the first god ushering in a new era. "This fellow possesses the power bestowed by the eye demon Shumagoras. Ordinary means are indestructible, but he possesses the energy of fire within himself. You could try his freezing ability." Set appeared to be offering Su Wenwu enthusiastic advice, but in reality, he wanted to test the capabilities of this earthling and assess the current danger to Earth. As an ancient god once banished to another dimension, Set had learned caution upon his return to Earth. He was not content to return to Earth with only a wisp of consciousness. Chapter 239 White House, Don't Come Over Here. The scattered magma coalesced into humanoid form, taking on the face of Killian. Facing the immense strength and even inexhaustible power of Su Wenwu, Killian considered retreating. Although the loss of his desperate soldiers had left him with heavy losses, his own safety was paramount. America had countless broken soldiers, they could have as many as they wanted. He was about to become the Emperor of America. Was there any need to fight a psychopath here? Yes, this yellow monkey was a psychopath. "Do I know you?" He just charged right in and attacked me. What a madman. Killian couldn't understand the Chinese Su Wenwu had just muttered to himself, and without an AI to translate this most difficult language, he had no idea why Su Wenwu had come to him under the guise of the 10 Rings gang. Killian tried to run, but the 10 rings were faster. Before he could even get away, his legs were crushed by the flying metal rings. His healing abilities were strong, but his defenses were not much higher than an average person's. Against the 10 rings, he was like a fragile porcelain vessel. 2 blocks away, a fire still burned atop a high-rise building. With Ellis dead, the attention of the American High Command was naturally drawn to the battle. Valentina de la Fontaine, who had narrowly escaped death, quietly approached with the remaining agents. Seeing the presence of the python, they hesitated. Countess, one of the 2 men is named Aldredge Killian, the owner of AIM in Cleveland. The other, an Asian man, has no information on him. Our database doesn't have him, the agent, holding the phone, reported to the boss as soon as she hung up. Whoever he is, he dares to cause trouble in America, so he's an enemy of America. Valentina was intrigued by Su Wenwu because the python that had caused them so much trouble was now docilely staying by his side. She had no idea of their connection, but assumed the snake god was wary of him. After all, the fighting prowess of this Asian man was not to be underestimated. Capturing him and unlocking his secrets would give America another extraordinary power. Notify the military to surround this area. Around this time, a massive spider appeared southwest of Washington. Hello, another familiar divine force, As the spider god set foot in Washington, the serpent god sensed its presence. The massive spider's long legs moved, seemingly slowly, but in reality, at breakneck speed, reaching the battle zone in a matter of moments. Seeing the spider god possess a host several times his own size, Set felt depressed. He turned his head away, pretending not to notice. "Hey, isn't that the serpent god?" the spider god greeted loudly, fearing the others wouldn't hear. "Who are you? Don't try to be so close." "Do you think I know you well?" Set said coldly. "Sorry, Set has 7 heads and a green skin." "I was wrong," the spider god apologized sincerely, but it sounded like a sneer. "You little loach are definitely not the powerful serpent god." "Fuck you," Set, provoked, immediately shot red lightning at the spider god. A disagreement erupted in a brawl between 2 incarnations of the demonic consciousness. As dimensional demons, their feelings towards Earth were focused solely on aggression and plunder. While the spider god's original form was relatively benign, this incarnation was fueled by the bloody scent of human sacrifice. While Su Wenwu and Killian, 2 humans, subconsciously sought to limit their destruction during combat, the 2 demonic incarnations showed no regard for this. Consequently, Washington real estate developers went bankrupt once again. The slender yet powerful 8 spider legs were like razor blades, easily shredding the surrounding skyscrapers. The red lightning spitted by the giant python was even more piercing, blasting through buildings and streets with devastating force. The spider and python's bodies, empowered by divine power, were harder than alloy, and every movement carried immense destructive force. In an instant, buildings collapsed, roads ruptured, and the entire neighborhood was reduced to rubble. Countless residents were unable to escape in time, and their agonizing cries could be heard everywhere. Su Wenwu and Killian, who had just been battling each other to death, were stunned upon seeing this. Killian turned and ran without a word, while Su Wenwu, unconcerned with the American's life or death, pursued the bug that had dared to impersonate him relentlessly. Blocked by 2 monsters in the opposite direction of the White House, Killian chose to run towards it, and Su Wenwu naturally followed. Coincidentally, Tony Stark, who had been chasing him all the way, finally arrived over Washington. Before he could see the 2 monsters demolishing the building in the distance, he saw Killian and Su Wenwu charging towards the White House. So, the Iron Man suit also flew towards the White House. Perhaps it was an illusion, but the apparently lifeless White House trembled. It seemed as if the White House was shouting, "Don't come any closer." Unfortunately, the White House wasn't senior brother Yoon, and the 3 charging towards it were Ken Shuang or Naifeng. They all ignored its resistance and continued to charge. In the past 2 years, the White House had been desecrated twice, and today it was on the verge of failure again. Tony accelerated, darting into the air in front of Killian and shouting, "This road is blocked." Facing the energy projectors in the Iron Man's palms, Killian continued to charge forward without hesitation. There was nothing wrong with him, there was someone even more powerful behind him. "You again," Su Wenwu, behind him, saw the Iron Man flying in the sky and instinctively clutched the 10 rings on his arm. He was a little frightened by the last time the goddess betrayed him. He absolutely couldn't let him do it in front of him again this time. "Who are you?" Tony asked first. After returning, he had Jarvis search every accessible database, even hacking into intelligence agencies of various countries, but he couldn't find a single photo of Su Wenwu. It was like he never existed. "I'm going to kill him," Su Wenwu said coldly, pointing at Killian. "If you want to die again, try to stop me." If the 10 rings hadn't suddenly failed against Tony last time, Su Wenwu wouldn't have bothered to argue with him and would have hurled them forward. But who could guarantee that the goddess wouldn't betray him again this time? There are only 0 and countless betrayals. The best thing to do is to scare this guy off and not act rashly. Why kill him? Tony had a grudge against Killian, but they were both Americans after all, and he needed a reason to convince himself. "He's the real boss behind the Mandarin," Su Wenwu patiently explained. Although Tony didn't know Su Wenwu, he had since researched Tony's profile and learned not only his identity but also that a Middle Eastern gang had kidnapped him 2 years prior. Naturally, Su Wenwu felt no guilt towards Tony, but he wasn't foolish enough to reveal everything either. He didn't want to be hounded by Tony in the future. The more they met, the greater the chance of 10 rings cheating. What? Hearing Su Wenwu's words, Tony was startled and turned to look at Killian, only to see him running even faster, heading straight for the White House. Killian believed that with Ellis dead and his ally about to succeed him, the White House was the perfect safe haven. Before entering the White House, Killian turned and gave Su Wenwu and Tony a provocative smile. It was as if he was saying, "Come on in and fight me if you dare." If the White House had a spirit, it would surely have jumped out and killed this fool. Finally, it was over. Danger was approaching the White House once again. Chapter 240, Can't America Lose Two Presidents in One Day? Dear viewers, Washington has been attacked again. Yes, again. The BBC commentator faced the camera with a serious expression, trying to force a mournful expression, but the corners of his mouth kept curling up involuntarily. Of course, it wasn't his fault, because at that moment, TV news anchors around the world, with the exception of America, were all feeling the urge to laugh but desperately trying to suppress it. This was the third time in 2 years. After Dongfang Bubei and the aliens, now gigantic, extraordinary creatures had appeared. Washington seemed cursed, with powerful beings occasionally showing off. Not only Americans were puzzled, but people from other countries were also puzzled. I guess it must be the ghosts of the Indians seeking revenge, cursing this land of Washington. No, it's obvious that God has forsaken America. This bandit nation is getting its comeuppance. Oh my God, this is so delightful. God bless this country, please keep its misfortunes. People around the world were buzzing with discussion. Seeing America suffer, few, except the run people, were unhappy. Lin Hao reconnected with Valentina, who is on the front lines in Washington. Madam Deputy Director, is your country really unwilling to help? On a high building, far from the scene of the two ferocious beasts' clash, Valentina hesitated for 2 seconds before flatly refusing. No, our country is capable of handling any threat. In the distant ruins, the spider god and the snake god's incarnations fought with increasing ferocity, as if venting the pent-up frustration of countless years of shedding life. Red lightning and white spiderwebs erupted incessantly, a juxtaposition of red and white, their endurance exceeding. The ruins were plowed over and over, the shattered walls reduced to rubble. The Air Force has arrived. The American military fighter jets finally arrived, firing missiles at the two ferocious beasts on the battlefield, only to be detonated mid-air. Lightning and spiderwebs hurtled toward the fighter jets, surprisingly faster than the missiles. The spider and python suddenly stopped fighting in unison and began playing a game of shooting planes, each in a different direction, as if competing to see who could shoot down the most planes. Don't they have a grudge? Valentina, watching the battle from afar, was stunned for a moment, then gritted her teeth. Why are they so in sync all of a sudden? Poor Valentina had no idea what the nature of dimensional demons was. Unless they could conquer the other's dimension and completely destroy the opponent, fighting between them was at most a warm-up exercise. Every demon in their circle knew that when they couldn't destroy their opponent, fighting was just for fun. When the mood struck, they fought, and when the mood wore off, they just went about their business. Few of the Marvel Universe's dimensional demons were stubborn fools. Each one was as cunning as a fox. How could they easily let humans take advantage? Madam, ground armored forces have surrounded this area, her subordinate reported hurriedly. Attack, Valentina suddenly realized, and immediately changed her tone. Oh no. Tell them to retreat, but it was too late. Mirrors suddenly appeared on the periphery of the battlefield between the two beasts, and as they rolled, they engulfed the nearby armored forces. Fuck you. Damn magician, Valentina cursed. Baron Mordo and several veteran Kamartaj magicians hadn't left yet. They discovered the mirror dimension's ultimate advantage over armored units, and naturally wouldn't pass up this opportunity for utter revenge. Shit, regular troops are useless against them. The Pentagon's generals were in a state of panic. After President Ellis was confirmed dead, Vice President Rodriguez assumed the throne according to procedure. Unfortunately, before he could even enjoy the joy of his new position, he was forced to face a harsh reality. Sir, you must move. Secret Service agents quickly surrounded him, refusing to allow for refusal. America can't lose two presidents in one day. Killian, who had just fled to the White House for shelter, encountered this chaotic scene. What the hell? Killian was bewildered. You're running too? Outside the White House, Su Wenwu finally stopped. Tony Stark was standing guard nearby, but he also had to consider the 10 rings. While they had assassinated heads of state numerous times over the millennia, assassination was different from a violent assault. Assassinations without evidence could be repeated, but storming a nation's highest government institution meant war with that nation. Modern society, after all, was different from ancient times. In ancient times, Su Wenwu didn't mind offending a nation. The power of the 10 rings could help him slay hundreds of thousands of troops, but it wasn't enough to stop a nuclear bomb. Seeing him stop outside the White House, Tony breathed a sigh of relief, realizing he had some sense. Since the other party was intimidated by America's national might, he should have rushed to the distant battlefield between the two ferocious beasts. From Jarvis's broadcast, Tony knew the military had suffered heavy losses. Boring, Lin Hao, watching the remote broadcast from within the SWORD's helicarrier, noticed Su Wenwu's final backing down, leaving him feeling rather unsatisfied. The Great Devil then turned his gaze to Squidward and asked, "Want to go down and play?" Squidward blinked furiously, his dozen tentacles waving up and down in a nod. "Okay, go down and play for a while," Lin Hao warned. "But don't run around or destroy this place. Just play in this city." Squidward understood instantly. The eye-demon Shumagoras was no ordinary demon to begin with, and now, facing the ultimate demon, he was like a cow standing on its head. Awesome. In a flash, Lin Hao darted from the aerospace carrier, now soaring over the Pacific Ocean, to an altitude of 10,000 meters above Washington. He released Squidward and dropped him, then decisively returned in less than a second. As he fell, Squidward's size continued to grow, transforming from a 1-meter-tall food item into a massive eye demon, its eyeballs over 1,000 meters in diameter. Even before he hit the ground, a massive wind pressure was already bearing down on the ground. The giant spiders and pythons, tacitly slaughtering American soldiers, looked up. "No way. This aura," the spider god exclaimed in amazement. "What a joke." The serpent god was no better, his mouth gaping at the sky in bewilderment. "How could he descend in his true form, sir? A giant creature has appeared in the sky," Jarvis quickly warned Tony. Tony looked up and saw a mountain covered in tentacles plummeting at high speed. Meanwhile, in different districts, 3 Squidwards, who were helping the Washington police evacuate residents on broomsticks, suddenly looked up. "Oh my god, what's that?" Peter Parker gasped. "Hide in the sewers." Gwen Stacy, however, reacted quickly, casting a shattering spell on the manhole cover below. Then, she called out to her companions, "Ned, use your newly learned shield charm." The 3 quickly descended into the deep sewers. Ned Leeds quickly waved his wand, shielding himself and his 2 companions in a transparent light shield, a reward for completing a semester's mission. At that moment, they couldn't care less about the residents on the road. Squidward, descending from the sky, landed. Its massive body covered a small portion of Washington, D.C., sending shockwaves throughout the city like a massive earthquake, destroying nearly every building. Coincidentally, it landed right on the White House. The unnamed demon, who declined to be named, stated that he definitely didn't land directly above the White House to drop anything. Chapter 241 Blooming Mushroom Cloud. This day was an absolute nightmare for all of America. First, terrorists kidnapped President Ellis and publicly executed him. Then, 2 extraordinary creatures appeared and wreaked havoc in downtown Washington, slaughtering the military. Finally, a mountain-sized octopus descended from the sky, completely destroying their great capital. Squidward's massive body slammed down onto the small portion of the city centered on the White House. Its 10-kilometer-long tentacles, like demonic whips, lashed the earth with horrifying scars. Shumagoras, X2. The frail spider god and snake god, relying on their own divine powers, dodged the eye demon's ferocious earthward throw, but their auras were weakening. They had descended only in consciousness, carrying a limited amount of divine power. Far from their home base, replenishing divine power was difficult. Once removed from the divine power's protective shield, their fragile bodies would be vulnerable. "Hey, I think I hear someone calling my name." The massive body swung from side to side, its thick tentacles deliberately crushing the 30-meter-wide spider and the barely 8-meter-long python. "Where is it? Where is it?" Squidward looked around, seemingly searching for the person or animal who had just called out his name. He muttered as he waved his countless tentacles, stomping on spiders and pythons. His acting was exaggerated, devoid of sincerity. Boom, boom, boom. With Squidward stomping, the ground in Washington trembled again and again, resounding like the sound of drums. 12 buildings had collapsed, the screams of the humans barely audible. Only a spider and a python continued to roar in anger, their divine light fading. "Sir, wake up," Jarvis gave Tony Stark, who had been stunned by the shockwave, a shot of cardiac stimulant and used electroshock therapy to revive him. Thanks to multiple upgrades to the Iron Man's suit's energy shields and the preemptive replacement of its high-powered power source, Iron Man survived the crushing attack, but was unfortunately slammed deep into the earth. "Where is this?" Tony asked, seeing the surroundings completely dark. "Sir, we've been crushed beneath a riverbed by a massive creature, currently 5.4 meters below the surface," Jarvis replied truthfully. "Giant creature." Tony then recalled the scene just now. He was rushing to the scene where the spider and python were fighting, when suddenly darkness fell, and he was knocked unconscious by a massive shockwave. Fortunately, he was flying across the Potomac River, and a tentacle crashed down, hammering his energy-shielded steel armor into the riverbed like a nail. The next moment, Tony emerged from the riverbed, only to be met with a scene that filled him with despair. An octopus the size of a mountain danced its countless tentacles merrily across the ruins of downtown Washington, and the earth groaned under the weight. The tall buildings vanished, the streets vanished, the once bustling city reverted to a barren wasteland, even the shattered walls being reduced to crude brick and stone by the octopus's massive tentacles. Occasionally, one or two numb figures stood on the shattered streets, neither crying nor running, staring blankly at the giant octopus, seemingly devoid of any human consciousness. There were no obvious pools of blood, having long since melted into the mud and rubble. There were also few bodies, presumably all gone to dust. No, this isn't real. Even a staunch believer in science, Tony now hoped it was just a dream. "Sir, this is indeed true," said Jarvis, emotionless and rational. "Washington has been destroyed by this giant creature." "Shut up," Tony, for the first time, lost his temper at Jarvis. With a roar, he charged at the giant octopus. "Sir, only 19% of the energy remains, and the supply tanks have been completely destroyed," Jarvis warned. But Tony, overcome with rage, ignored the warnings and rushed towards the tentacle, firing frantically. While Iron Man's weapons managed some damage against the giant tentacle, the Beholder, with its self-healing powers, healed in the blink of an eye. Another fly, Squidward, swung his tentacle, slamming into Iron Man with immense force, sending him careening like a baseball. After shooing away the flies, it turned its attention to the weakened spider and python. Opportunities to ravage a demon of the same rank were rare. Having finally caught a chance to take advantage of a situation, it was time to make the most of it. Enough, the spider god shot a web into the sky, leaping upwards until it was directly in front of the giant eyeball. He roared, "Shumagoras, you seek to provoke a war of guts." With a resounding thud, its thick tentacles transformed into sharp swords and stabbed the suspended spider. The last trace of its aura shattered, the immense force crushing the alien spider into pulp. The spider god's consciousness, its carrier gone, vanished from Earth in an instant. "A war of guts," Squidward sneered. "Why would I be afraid of you? I have my master's protection now." If he could easily defeat his own master, wouldn't it be easy for him to defeat these demons of his own rank? After defeating the spider god, Squidward turned and locked eyes with the serpent god Set, who had slumped to the ground like a dead snake, now limp. "Are you going to do it yourself, or wait for me?" He was done pretending, laying it all out. "I just want to know how you were able to descend to Earth in your true form." With his last remaining breaths, the serpent god Set was clearly deeply curious. Why hadn't his sister, Gaia, been awakened by the Beholder's true form? If Set knew how to descend into the Beholder's true form, even after 4 billion years away from Earth, he would have a chance to return as a king. "Want to learn?" Squidward scoffed. "Tell me your dimension, and I'll teach you." "Haha," Set sneered. "Alice, I gave you a chance and didn't seize it." A massive tentacle slammed down, shattering the python's red halo and crushing it into pulp. "I'm telling the truth, so why doesn't anyone believe me?" Suddenly, a missile flew in from the southwest. "Oh no, this is getting out of hand." Squidward's large eyes fixed on the missile in the distant sky. He instantly shrank to less than half a meter, quickly burrowing into the rubble. "Master, help. Americans have no moral principles. If they can't defeat them, they'll just use their ultimate weapon." Lin Hao, who had been watching closely, naturally spotted the missile and knew what weapon was on its warhead. Without a word, he used his telepathic skills to summon Squidward, who had already signed a telepathic contract. Meanwhile, Tom Riddle, far away at Hogwarts, approached the three little creatures hiding in the sewers and quickly brought them back to school. Su Wenwu, who had just emerged from underground, also sensed the danger and immediately activated his 10 rings at full power, charging eastward toward the sea. "Jarvis, what kind of missile is that?" Tony, who had just been flung over the sea, realized something. "Sir, it's a nuclear bomb," Jarvis replied truthfully, having hacked into the American high-level communications network. Tony was silent for a moment, then suddenly, without hesitation, flew towards the bomb. There might not be many survivors in the rubble below, but some still lived. "Sir, you're running low on energy," Jarvis shouted. Seeing Tony refusing to listen, Jarvis took control, reversed course, and hurtled Tony towards the seabed. "Jarvis, what are you doing?" Tony shouted. "Sir, I can't let you die," Jarvis loyally defended his master. "Stop. Stop," not only Tony shouted, but the remaining American officials who had just given the launch order also called for a halt, as observers noticed a mountain-sized octopus monster had vanished. "The monster has left Washington. Cancel the detonation, who can be sure? Monsters don't appear and disappear out of thin air. We have a responsibility to all of America. Washington is no longer in need of rescue. All cabinet members are out of contact. We must ensure the monster is eliminated in Washington." With the White House vanishing once again, the top brass of the federal government was wiped out, and America lost its semblance of power. Until a new Congress and cabinet emerged, power in the country returned to the hands of the conglomerates behind the scenes. The masters lost their white gloves and workers, and could only reluctantly come out to work overtime. Whether it is a Jewish family or Anglo-Serbian pirates, there is no lack of determination to cut off one's own arm. Since the workers are dead, let's replace them with another batch. We can't let the dangerous giant creatures run to their base camp and drop from the sky again, right? You say there are still civilians alive? Sorry, the kind-hearted masters didn't see it. Besides, as long as the monsters can be eliminated, these losses can be forgiven. At most, we can lower the flag to commemorate it later. The proposal to cancel the explosion was not passed. A moment later, a huge mushroom bloomed on the land of Washington. However, the monster that caused chaos had disappeared, and the big bosses of the American consortium behind the scenes were blown up in vain. Lin Hao, who was flying over the Pacific Ocean, saw the blooming mushroom cloud and had a new understanding of the behavior of the American consortium masters. It's just breaking new ground time and time again. The mushroom cloud erupting in Washington shocked the world. No one could have imagined the Americans would be so reckless as to detonate mushroom bombs on their own territory, especially in their capital. Oh my God, why would they? This is tragic. The residents of Washington are so innocent. Humans always sympathize with those who suffer misfortune. But it soon became clear that this decision came from the American consortium behind the scenes. Those who knew the truth were not surprised, but those who did not were still incredulous. Washington was merely the political center of the United States. With the cabinet and Congress destroyed, this political center became worthless. The consortium's leaders made this bold move to prevent the giant monster from destroying the more important economic center, New York. By understanding this logic, those who knew the truth no longer found the American consortium's choice surprising. Chapter 242 Airbrush. Deputy Director Valentina has lost contact, and the U.S. will soon appoint a new deputy director to replace her. Runana, Lin Hao's assistant, was responsible for handling daily affairs. The World Security Council is holding a joint meeting to discuss further effective measures to deal with aliens and giant creatures. They've invited you to attend. Just say I'm deeply sorry about what happened in Washington. I'm exhausted, and I need a break. Lin Hao made up an excuse. Wu Nan looked at Lin Hao in surprise, thinking, didn't you cause the Washington incident? What are you looking at? Lin Hao glared at her and asked, can't I have regrets? Because Tony Stark is still alive, so you regret it? Wu Nana speculated. Since you're so accurate in judging people, why not just go get a fortune teller? Lin Hao waved her off. He did have some regrets, but not much, mainly because he hadn't been able to stake out the Time Variance Administration. In Marvel's new Deadpool vs. Wolverine, the Time Variance Authority once again demonstrates its terrifying power, making Lin Hao envious and eager to control it. He didn't want to attend the meeting because the amount of Soul's resentment harvested this time was enormous, and Lin Hao wanted to start the lottery immediately. After sending Wu Nana away, Lin Hao entered the director's bedroom, which he had transformed, called out to the little devil, and entered the dimension it linked to. Background data showed that the energy gained this time was enough for the little devil to travel through time and space over 30,000 times. The previous Houston riot killed hundreds of thousands of people, but that was only an indirect impact, and the Soul's resentment harvested was not 100%. In this incident, Although Lin Hao initially only played a role in fanning the flames, his final act of throwing the eye demon into the fire was a direct and indirect participation, and the soul's resentment harvested was 100%. Washington, D.C., has a small population. Before Lin Hao arrived in America, it was only a little over 600,000. Over the past 2 years, his relentless actions have caused a steady decline in the city's population, now down to less than 400,000. Demons descended from the sky, killing at least half of them, and most of the rest were destroyed by mushroom bombs. Combined, the energy gained this time was far greater than the previous incident in Texas. However, Lin Hao discovered that this sudden and unprovoked death left many people with no time to vent their resentment. Sure enough, a little foreplay was needed. Begin, Lin Hao waved his hand, letting the little demons take over. This time, he had personally killed so many people that his mood took a slight hit. He wondered if it would be more cost-effective to kill them all at once or to gradually increase the number over time. Although the resentment of a dying creature was highest, it was only a small amount of profit. If they stayed, sustainable development would eventually surpass that. Too confused, should I drain the pond to catch fish or pursue sustainable development? The great demon was caught in a dilemma. The little devil quickly returned and tossed Lin Hao a white bead, round and smooth like a pearl. It was from the Yuanchu series, the Chicken Jade. Upon touching it, he was prompted to copy its properties. Copy properties, Lin Hao paused, puzzled. Shouldn't it be absorbing demonic energy? The Chicken Jade is a special item in Yuanchu, imbued with immense energy, capable of enhancing the demonic powers of demons. After a moment's silence, Lin Hao chose to copy. It's always good to have more skills. After copying, the fire key ran in the farm, and several dragons in the rest area cast longing glances at Lin Hao. Sensing these glances, Lin Hao decisively turned and asked, "What do you think, Master? I think you've become even more handsome." Justin Hammer, his lackey, gave him a fawning, lapdog-like expression. "Boss, you have a power we long for." The Azure Dragon approached, nudging Lin Hao with its massive head. "Can I have a hair?" Lin Hao thought for a moment and tossed him a strand of hair. King Long immediately swallowed a hair, his aura suddenly increasing. "It seems I've become the Four Souls Jade," Lin Hao suddenly realized. "It has a fatal attraction to all demons. Wait, then I'm like Tang Samzang? What a pity. Marvel doesn't even have a female demon." After the first shipment, Lin Hao waited a long time before finally getting another good thing. The little demon said, clutching a branch he'd broken off from somewhere, and came forward to offer his treasure, a look of pride begging for praise. "Did you come across the good thing I told you to remember?" Lin Hao eagerly took the branch, a look of immediate satisfaction on his face. From Naruto, the branch of the sacred tree. "Hey, you see a giant tree with tons of white cocoons on it? Hey, the flowers at the top haven't bloomed yet, and you can't find any fruit, so you broke off a branch." Lin Hao reached out and touched the little devil's head, praising him. "Well done." He quickly moved to an open area and cast the power of time over it. The branch instantly grew larger and thicker, standing upright and swaying constantly before branching out, transforming into a towering tree. The massive tree seemed to connect heaven and earth, but no matter how Lin Hao ripened it, the buds atop the sacred tree refused to open, let alone produce fruit. "It seems I need planetary energy," Lin Hao pondered, then suddenly had an idea. "I'm almost tired of exploiting the Americans. Why not plant this tree on Japanese territory? After all, ninjas are your specialty." With this idea in mind, Lin Hao first restored the giant sacred tree to branches and then continued to wait for the little devil's harvest. After waiting for about a day and clearing out a ton of useless items, the little devil suddenly tossed Lin Hao a brush. It was an ordinary brush, black with a white bristle. It was stained with some black ink, a faint scent, but no special energy. It was just ordinary ink, even with tiny particles visible to the naked eye. Its quality wasn't even as good as the 5 yuan bottle of Hero brand ink. However, when Lin Hao touched the brush, he felt a jolt. It wasn't because the brush was charged, but because the information within it had caused Lin Hao to lose consciousness for a moment. No way. Lin Hao's expression was strange. Surprise, shock, disbelief, and then joy. No, ecstasy. Really? Is this true? Ever since his encounter with the Time Variance Administration, Lin Hao realized that his actions in this universe were subject to constant interference. It felt like he was in handcuffs and shackles, making him uncomfortable no matter what he did. However, The power bestowed upon the time variance administration by Marvel's editors was too great. Even though Lin Hao didn't care about the agency's employees, he had to care about their ability to restart the timeline and flip the table. The appearance of this brush in his hand gave Lin Hao hope of ending it all. Chapter 243 Ma Liang's Magic Pen, Turning the Illusion into Reality. From Ma Liang, the magic brush, Ma Liang's magic brush. It looked like an ordinary brush, yet it held incredible power. Lin Hao, upon touching it, was prompted to copy its properties. Was there any need to hesitate? In a flash, he chose to copy. The little devil brought another object. But Lin Hao's attention was now entirely focused on the brush. Put it on the ground, and continue playing, dismissing the little devil. Lin Hao immediately went to a table and cleared it of its contents, oblivious to the preciousness of the instruments and samples. A perfect serum, worth billions or even tens of billions at auction, was smashed to the ground, destroyed. Taking a large sheet of white paper, Lin Hao took a deep breath and began to paint. Soon, a sinuous dragon appeared on the paper. With a final stroke, a four-legged serpent rose from the paper, like a deflated balloon transformed from a flat surface into a three-dimensional form after inflation. The four-legged snake tried to stand, but lost its balance, stumbled, and fell again. A closer look revealed that this so-called dragon was not only bizarrely built and unevenly thick, but also had four legs of varying lengths. The left hind leg even had one toe missing from the other three legs. Lin Hao paused. Wow, boss, your earthworm is so majestic. King Long came over to flatter him. Having just obtained a hair from the boss, which had increased his strength, King Long thought he should perform well to gain more benefits. Lin Hao turned and gave him a death stare. With a wave of his hand, King Long's massive body flew off into the distant darkness. Returning to the table, the four-legged snake was still trying to stand, but the crippled environment and the earth were doomed to failure. Lin Hao was silent for a moment, then bent down to pick up a scalpel. Blood splattered, and the four-legged snake had no hope of rising. Next, the great devil gave up his temporary artist position and returned to Director Lin in the technical department, using various instruments to examine the four-legged snake's corpse. Amazing. It's truly amazing. Lin Hao couldn't hide his astonishment. It actually makes the imaginary real. Lin Hao had just imagined drawing a blue dragon, as he was most familiar with them, having dissected them numerous times. While the appearance was completely different, the data after comparison was identical. Ma Liang's magic brush could actually draw whatever he imagined, transforming the objects he drew into reality. With sufficient skill, one could create objects from thin air. After experimenting once, Lin Hao carefully put the magic brush away, switched to an ordinary brush, and began painting again. Another strange four-legged snake leaped from the white paper, proving that Lin Hao had replicated the magic brush's power to transform the imaginary into reality. Then, Lin Hao moved beyond painting and began creating animated videos on his computer. The people and objects in these videos actually jumped off the screen and became real, though their appearance was a bit strange, all 3D composites that looked unreal. Through continuous experimentation, Lin Hao gradually mastered the magic brush's power. He discovered that he could create anything he could clearly perceive in his mind, but could only create representations of things he couldn't. For example, Lin Hao drew an axe, a jade disc, and a strange-looking person. But even after inscribing the words Pandu Axe, Creation Jade Disc, and Gaohua Gold and Immortal, the resulting object remained a mere model, a strange-looking one at that. I see. So, you must first fully understand the object you're drawing before you can truly transform it into something real. It's like artistic creation. Humans can't create a work of art without any concept. That's good, that's good. Thank goodness my brain doesn't make sense. At this moment, Lin Hao felt fortunate to have such an unreasonable mind. Otherwise, even with a magic brush, his creations would be extremely limited. Just like Ma Liang in the fairy tale, he could only draw cows, horses, chickens, ducks, or mountains of gold and the sea, things he could understand, but not the stars in the universe. But Lin Hao could. Even if he didn't fully understand something at the moment, he could quickly grasp it and gain a solid grasp of it. After some experimentation, Lin Hao calmed down his excitement. Another night had passed, and the little devil, having exhausted all its energy, ran back to Lin Hao. It, however, never tires. Meow, the little devil tried to lead Lin Hao to see its harvest. But Lin Hao was in no mood for it. I'll come back and see. Lin Hao hurried towards the exit of the mysterious dimension. Just where the little devil pointed, lay two, skeletons. One human, clutching an ancient sword, the other, the skeleton of a canine, in its arms. Just as Lin Hao left this dimension and the light portal vanished, two ethereal spirits, one male and one female, emerged from the two skeletons. "Husband, where's this place?" The female spirit clung to the male's arm, surveying the surroundings with a nervous gaze. "I don't know either," the male spirit, likewise, surveyed the unfamiliar space with a wary gaze. "Wow, newcomers," a blue dragon soared into the sky on a cloud, landing in front of the two spirits. Long, the female spirit trembled, as if facing the pressure of a natural enemy. "Who are you?" The male spirit, though startled, immediately waved toward the skeleton on the ground, snatched up the ancient sword, and held it loosely, ready to face the azure dragon. "Hey, I'm warning you, don't cause any trouble." The azure dragon's huge eyes pierced the male spirit, and he warned, "Wait until my boss gets back, and you'll know what to do." He slammed the ground and let out a mighty dragon roar, a threatening gesture. The male spirit, however, wasn't impressed, and suddenly launched his sword at the azure dragon. "You idiot! You really want to fight, don't you?" The azure dragon dodged the sword, roared, and then turned and shouted, "You bastards from the farm, come here." The azure dragon was a bit timid. Soon, a group of colorful fire killen rushed out of the farm. "Come on, if you've got the guts." The arrival of his minions, the azure dragon, full of confidence, cast a draconic scorn at the male spirit. Suddenly, the flying swords doubled, then quadrupled, filling the sky. Oh, King Long's tone instantly changed. "Brother, can we discuss this?" Lin Hao, who had already left, was unaware of what had transpired. With the power of time, he wasn't worried about the place being destroyed. Upon emerging, he immediately contacted Zheng Xian. "Find me the best painters, directors, editors, and editors," Lin Hao demanded, emphasizing, "There's a master named Lang Jun. I must get him." "What's wrong?" Zheng Xian hadn't been able to contact Lin Hao for another day and night, but he was used to it and knew what he was working on. So, after hearing these requests, he couldn't help but feel a little hopeful. "I got it." Lin Hao suppressed his excitement, but the corners of his mouth curled up. "What did you get?" Zheng Xian's breathing quickened, a rarity in his long life. "I got the treasure that will help me achieve my goal," Lin Hao blurted out. "Really?" Zheng Xian jumped up from behind his desk in shock, slamming his hands on it. "That's right, you should quickly gather everyone." Lin Hao nodded seriously. "Ho ha, good. Zheng Xian suddenly laughed out loud, feeling an unprecedented joy. He had waited for so many years, just for this opportunity. Of course, it's not over. The magic pen can only solve short-term goals. To completely solve the problem, we still need to start from scratch. In addition, I have been writing slowly these 2 days because I am really tired. I haven't taken a day off since I started writing in May, especially since I started preparing for the book to be published. Every day is like a battle. After all, I am not a full-time writer. Don't worry, I will still do the minimum of 3 updates. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, Going to the World Where the Marvel Editorial Department is Located. The World Security Council was still locked in a heated discussion regarding the monstrous creature that had suddenly appeared in Washington. The increasingly unfamiliar world was causing the established powers to feel increasingly powerless. First, there were the martial artists represented by Dongfang Bubei and later, Yang Guo, who had appeared at Hogwarts. Then came aliens descending from the sky, then magicians. Now, even creatures as massive as mountains were wreaking havoc on Earth. None of the established powers could predict what the future would hold. Representatives from the 5 major powers were busy meeting and negotiating, trying to devise a more effective response to the threat. However, at Zheng Xian's command, the SHIE Bureau sprang into action. Lin Hao received all the necessary professionals, including painters, sculptors, directors, editors, and editors. After leaving Wu Nano with a few bottles of Polyjuice potion to impersonate him, Lin Hao returned to SHIE Bureau Villa in the capital to systematically learn these techniques. Perhaps it's the magic brush's inherent requirements, requiring exquisite skill to perfectly capture the imagery. Even if Lin Hao replicated the ability to transform the imaginary into the real, achieving this without a brush or other tools, he was still limited by his own skills, such as painting or editing. Consider the protagonist of the modern fairy tale Ma Liang the magic brush, Ma Liang, a child with exceptional painting skills, who was gifted with a divine brush. Lin Hao couldn't rely on luck, and he couldn't afford to, because this opportunity affected not only himself but also many others. Fortunately, with his unpredictable mind, Lin Hao was a quick learner, especially under the expert guidance of Master Ling Jun, who swiftly mastered his realistic painting techniques, surpassing even those of a high-definition camera. In addition to painting, Lin Hao also focused on directing, editing, and other specialized techniques for script adaptation. Zheng Xian didn't know Lin Hao's reason for all this, but he believed he wasn't someone who acted without purpose. He refrained from delving into Lin Hao's secrets until the results were known, fearing that Eternal might suddenly unleash a powerful calculation and glimpse the secrets. Lin Hao possessed a protective aura of a demon from a higher dimension, concealing his secrets. Furthermore, his soul didn't belong to the Marvel box, so there was no need to worry. Zheng Xian, however, was a native Marvel man. Because the matter was of grave importance, Lin Hao had spent a full 2 months in seclusion, exhausting the skills of over a dozen industry experts before deciding to emerge. Take me to Wade Wilson, the Deadpool who can travel to the world of Marvel's editorial office. Zheng Xian was momentarily taken aback by Lin Hao's first words after emerging from seclusion. Then, with immense determination, he suppressed his urge to delve into the matter and simply asked solemnly, "Are you sure?" "I'm ready." Lin Hao nodded solemnly. Zheng Xian took a deep breath, and the old Taoist priest behind him donned the ring and began to draw circles. Kamar Taj's portal magic can connect to any point in the multiverse, even to the void at the end of time. However, the world of the Marvel editorial department exists independently of the multiverse. Although it too has entered the Marvel box, it is a world without magic beyond the fourth wall. Currently, only Deadpool and She-Hulk have broken the fourth wall and reached this magic-free world. Even the Temporal Variance Authority's teleportation technology is ineffective. Therefore, it is necessary to first find a Deadpool capable of breaking the fourth wall and have him lead them to this magic-free world. As the golden red light formed, a tiger-skinned head immediately popped out from the opposite side. "Fuck. Mr. Wade is showering. You're peeping. You must pay." Seeing the mysterious Zheng Xian and the old Taoist priest again, Wade calmed down a bit, but still insisted, "I'm going to increase my fee by 10% this time." "No, 20%. With that, he quickly ran to put on his custom-made red bodysuit and stood before Zheng Xian in a coquettish pose. "Come on, fill all my holes with gold bars." Wade's body was bulging, his mouth wide open, and his hands spread as buttocks. Zheng Xian, as usual, was furious. He had no choice but to ask the old Taoist priest to take out a box of gold bars and stuff one yellow croaker after another into Deadpool's hole-ridden tights. He then stuffed them into his mouth, and finally his asshole. He couldn't understand why he didn't just take the gold, but wasn't that Wade Wilson? "Oh my god, this feels so good." Wade thoroughly enjoyed the process, and he preferred the feel of the gold bars. After enjoying it, Wade removed all the gold bars and casually tossed them on the sofa in the dingy apartment. He changed back into his formal red uniform and his full gear. "Get to work, this pretty boy." This time, Zheng Xian had just brought Jia Ying here once before, and he'd occasionally been tempted to visit the world where the Marvel editorial office was, seeking a way to transcend. So Wade knew Zheng Xian's arrival would be a surefire way to make money. "That's right, but I want to go with you this time," Zheng Xian replied. "In your case," Wade emphasized, "you'll have to pay extra." The old Taoist priest produced several more boxes of gold bars and inquired, "Now, or later?" "Wait, I'm quite satisfied now." Wade turned coquettishly, patted his hips, and said to Zheng Xian and Lin Hao, "Come on, hold on tight." Zheng Xian, having had experience several times, stepped forward and embraced Wade's waist with a stern face. Lin Hao, curious, followed suit. Wade suddenly unsheathed his two swords and performed a dazzling dance. Just as Lin Hao thought he was about to slash through the air, Wade sheathed them, raised his hands high, and brought his legs together, assuming a diving stance. Immediately, Wade fell forward, dragging Zheng Xian and Lin Hao, who were holding him tightly on either side, with him to the ground. But just as Lin Hao was about to make close contact with the ground, a large number of pink bubbles suddenly emerged from the ground, and Wade and the others fell into dazzling, multicolored space. "Hold him tight, don't let go," Zheng Xian warned Lin Hao sternly. "This must be the gap between the multiverse and reality. Even if you use Kamartaj's teleportation magic, you can't get back." Clearly, Zheng Xian had experimented with this before, but he didn't know who the unlucky person was, or if he was just a tool. In a place ordinary people would avoid, Wade was paddling happily forward like he was in a swimming pool. This strange dimension clearly had no concept of time. Lin Hao could only calculate the time mentally, finding it took about 5.5 minutes. The scenery suddenly changed, revealing a dazzling starry sky. "Shit, we're actually high up in the sky this time." Indeed, the moment they arrived in this world, Lin Hao felt the pull of Earth's gravity, pulling him down. Wade didn't care, he wouldn't die if he fell. Although the editorial office's world was devoid of demons, gods, or superpowers, Deadpool and She-Hulk retained their abilities after entering it, and She-Hulk even retained her transformed form. Lin Hao quickly grabbed them and apparated to the ground. Wade wasn't surprised. Anyone who could bring Zheng Xian here was definitely not a normal person. "Here is." Lin Hao looked around the night city, quickly finding a street sign and confirming the location. Burbank, California. If only Deadpool vs. Wolverine had been released 2 months earlier, people would have been more accepting of the Temporal Variance Administration. After all, the TVA is a prominent presence throughout the film. Chapter 245, a one-to-one restoration of the real world. "Damn this air, this smell." Wade Wilson suddenly removed his mask and vomited directly onto the street. The most bizarre thing was that he wasn't just pretending to retch, he actually vomited his lunch. Lin Hao gave him a serious look, noticing his movements were smooth and unacted. He turned to Zheng Xian and asked, "Is there a safe house?" Zheng Xian nodded. "Come with me." As expected, for a professional agent with years of experience, it would be a disservice to his character if he hadn't already made plans in this world. Zheng Xian led Lin Hao and Wade to a high-rise apartment building. After successfully verifying their identities with facial recognition, they entered a room on the 19th floor, unlocking it with a fingerprint. The 4 rooms, upstairs, downstairs, left, and right, are all connected by a secret passage. There's a sewer pipe running directly downstairs from the window on the left, Zheng Xian explained. He walked to the window and parted the curtains, revealing a view of an office building across the street. The building across the street is Marvel's office building. Marvel Studios is upstairs, and the Marvel editorial office is downstairs. They also have a sprawling studio lot in the suburbs, where they've been filming movies in recent years. Clearly, Zheng Xian's repeated visits to this world weren't just a groan of self-pity or impotent rage. He'd already gathered a wealth of information about Marvel. Lin Hao paused for a moment, then turned to Deadpool, who was reaching for a bottle of wine from the refrigerator. "Wade, have you killed a Marvel editor before?" "Twice," Wade said proudly. "Not only did I kill them twice, I killed every superhero in this universe, twice." So, it seemed like the plot of Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe and Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe too. Return of the Assassin in the comics was just beginning. Glancing at Wade's pride, Lin Hao felt the urge to ask him, "Since you've already done it twice, haven't you realized there's something wrong?" The reason Deadpool in the comics slaughters famous superheroes and even breaks the fourth wall to enter the so-called real world and slaughter Marvel editors is because he discovers the existence of the real world and the editorial department, and this leads him to question everything about himself. His birth, his superpowers, and his entire destiny are controlled by these damned editors, who even drive Deadpool insane. This is difficult for Wade to accept, and his faith wavers, leading him to rebel against fate, slaughtering superheroes and killing the editors. However, he doesn't realize that his resistance is also a fate created by the editors. With the release of the 2 standalone volumes Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, a so-called real world emerged alongside Marvel's multiverse, hyperverse, and omniverse. This demon-free real world is a one-to-one replica of the real world, but it remains a product of Marvel's editors, and it also exists within the confines of the Marvel Universe. This real world can be considered a special dimension, where the Marvel editorial department holds greater authority than the multiverse itself. At least a multiverse can only control everything within the multiverse, while the editorial department, which is essentially a projection of the real-world Marvel Universe, has the power to alter the multiverse's settings. This real world, like the real world, coincides with the release of the comic book Deadpool Slaughters the Marvel Universe 2, Resurgence at the end of 2017. Naturally, Several film and television series have also been filmed, with the production of Avengers 3 and Avengers 4 already completed, and Avengers: Infinity War set to release in a few months. While Zheng Xian and Deadpool can only observe the Marvel editorial department's settings for each universe, Lin Hao, from the real world, can compare this world with the real one. Lin Hao searched online in his apartment and discovered that the heads of state of each country remained exactly as he remembered them, along with many major events and national histories. This world, aside from being located within the Marvel Universe's giant box, is virtually identical to the one Lin Hao once inhabited. Because Marvel was being lazy, they simply used their own employees as models and extras in both the comics and the TV series She-Hulk, thus creating this one-to-one replica of the real world. It sounds fantastical, but as someone who had been deeply influenced by fiction before his time travel, Lin Hao could understand this fabricated world. Moreover, he possessed a little demon that could travel to other worlds. "What are you going to do next?" Zheng Xian asked Lin Hao. Lin Hao had come all the way here, having previously claimed he had obtained a treasure that could free his universe from the control of the Marvel editors, and had spent 2 months preparing. Clearly, he was planning something. Lin Hao smiled and said, "I plan to apply for a job at Marvel's editorial department after dawn." "Huh?" Zheng Xian was visibly stunned. "I need to penetrate the enemy camp to execute my plan." Facing the unwavering worry in Zheng Xian's eyes, Lin Hao reassured him, "Don't worry. This world doesn't have any supernatural powers. The Marvel editor's consciousness can't influence me. More accurately, it can't influence Lin Hao's soul, because his current body also originated from the world created by the editors. Even Deadpool could massacre an entire editorial office, and Lin Hao, after transforming into a Super Saiyan, could even destroy the Earth with a single Kigen blast. Naturally, there was no need to worry about his safety. However, violence couldn't overcome the rules of their universe, governed by the Marvel consciousness. Deadpool seemingly killed the editor twice, but the editorial office remained completely unaffected. Only rules can defeat rules. Lin Hao had previously lacked such power, and neither did Zheng Xian or anyone else in the multiverse of Huaxia he had assembled. However, after receiving Ma Liang's magic pen, Lin Hao gained the power of rules. But what if you're discovered? Even Zheng Xian, who had lived for over 2,000 years, still felt a mortal's underlying fear of a god when faced with a Marvel editor who could manipulate his life and the fate of everything in the universe at will. Lin Hao, however, didn't feel that fear. His soul was of a higher order, a true spirit. "Don't worry, don't deify these editors. They're just ordinary people in this world," Lin Hao continued, smiling, reassuring Zheng Xian. "They're ordinary people, with ordinary joys and sorrows, ordinary diligence and laziness. What normal company has employees who don't slack off at work?" Facing the Marvel editorial department, Lin Hao maintained a remarkably calm demeanor, even a hint of superiority. After all, he possessed the power to destroy it at any moment. Just as he had convinced Zheng Xian, Wade suddenly appeared. "What do you mean? You're planning on staying here longer?" "I don't want to. I hate this place." "This contradicts our previous agreement." Lin Hao pulled a wilted apple from the refrigerator, which had been there for who knows how many days. He then applied the power of time to it, instantly restoring it to its juicy state. "Boss. From now on, you're my boss." Wade leaped forward, grasping Lin Hao's free hand with both of his own, shaking it vigorously, his tone sincere. "You can stay here as long as you want. Wade's special car is always at your service." He immediately began to undress, pointing to his bumpy skin and saying to Lin Hao, "I want to feel like I'm 18, not 16, wait, 20, I think. I lasted the longest when I was 20, no, boss, can you customize it partially? I think weapons with bumps and dents are more popular." The real world where Marvel's editorial department is located chose the end of 2017 for plot reasons, as the major event of Infinity War in the Marvel Cinematic Universe had already concluded. P.S. As a side note, although my book is explicitly anti-American, it will probably only affect my readers at most. What author can influence the real world we live in? To truly write such a work would be a masterpiece. Aren't all the real worlds in books still within the books? Aren't the attainment of the great Dao and transcendence all in the books? If other protagonists can influence the real world in their books, why can't mine? A bunch of people are saying it's over unless you buy Marvel or destroy them, and you can continue to draw. I'm speechless. After the protagonist attains enlightenment and reopens the world, can't a simple slap at the real world America in the book solve the problem? Chapter 246 Director Lin joins Marvel. Since it's a one-to-one replica of the real world, it naturally has real social rules. In America, if you have money, you can achieve anything. Leveraging the limited influence Zheng Xian had already developed in this world, Lin Hao obtained a full legal identity. He then submitted a resume, a hand-drawn sketch, and a short video he'd edited to Marvel Studios in this world. At the end of 2017, Marvel Studios was about to release its final blockbuster, a decade in the making, solidifying the dominance of superhero IP at the global box office for years to come. This was a period of rapid growth, and there was a pressing need for specialized talent. Lin Hao's resume, especially his work, quickly caught the attention of Marvel's Human Resources Department, who invited him for an interview the next day. On the day of the interview, Zheng Xian personally escorted Lin Hao, dressed in a suit and tie, to the door. Looking like a parent escorting a child to an exam. After a long hesitation, he finally said nothing, simply patting Lin Hao's shoulder. "Wait for good news," Lin Hao said, his expression relaxed. After restoring Wade Wilson's skin, he couldn't wait to go to the bar and flirt with girls. Lin Hao placed a magical mark on him, just in case. Zheng Xian should have gone back, but his mind was completely focused on Lin Hao, and he felt uneasy. Besides, he could contact a white-bearded ancient one in the multiverse and use the time stone to time his return. The last time he brought Jia Ying here, he had timed her return the very next second after she disappeared. So, no matter how much time passed in this real world, no matter how much time had passed in the previous universe, Zheng Xian could always bring Lin Hao back to the exact moment she left. For two of them who had already lived forever, months or even years wouldn't make a difference. Lin Hao, dressed as a recent graduate, arrived at the Marvel office building across the street. He expertly used his smartphone, presented the security guard with the access code included with his invitation, passed through security, and checked in at the front desk. After the formalities, Lin Hao was led upstairs by a hostess to the lounge. "Mr. Wang, please wait." Lin Hao used the life return technique to transform his appearance into a face that mirrored his own soul, his past life's appearance. This real world was incredibly real, identical to the one Lin Hao had inhabited in his previous life. The only thing that reminded him it wasn't real was himself. Lin Hao logged into every website and app he remembered using from his past life. Some worked, but others were dead. Even after successfully logging in, the person he saw wasn't the same person he had been in his previous life. This world didn't have the Wang Yuan he once knew. Even the parents and relatives he'd found through searching for them looked different and had different life trajectories. His parents had never crossed paths in this world, each with their own family. Even their appearance differed slightly from Lin Hao's parents in his previous life, much like the changes caused by different environments during development. Lin Hao only had his past life's soul, no physical body, and couldn't even create a DNA. Moreover, he knew this world wasn't the real world, so he didn't intend to cause any trouble. As luck would have it, during the planning process, Lin Hao used the same appearance as his true spirit to avoid any metaphysical mishaps. "Mr. Wang, it's your turn." The hostess didn't show any apparent bias towards Lin Hao due to his Asian identity. After Marvel began filming, they brought in a number of Chinese employees to capitalize on the global box office, which had already ranked third, and later second. Although these traders were mostly second, third, or fourth-generation Chinese, their understanding of Chinese culture wasn't much better than that of Americans. They simply had a yellowish complexion. Entering the office, 3 interviewers sat behind a row of desks. The lead interviewer was examining Lin Hao's hand-drawn sketch. Upon seeing Lin Hao sit down, the lead interviewer raised his tablet and asked, "Did you draw this?" Lin Hao nodded obediently. "You should know the interview rules." "While we'd like to believe this is your work," Lin Hao smiled shyly, immediately taking out his brushes and paper, glanced at the lead interviewer, and began drawing in front of him. The lead interviewer smiled. Before long, a new sketch was completed, and Lin Hao stepped forward and politely handed it over. Until he achieved his goal, Lin Hao would maintain a shy and introverted persona, masquerading as a talented but slightly socially anxious young man. This persona would allow him access to long-produced comic manuscripts and film and television master tapes, likely stored away in warehouses. "Not bad. Your fundamentals are solid, and your technique is expert." The lead interviewer, upon seeing the sketch, had essentially made up his mind. Seeing the lead interviewer's satisfaction, the other interviewer to his left also picked up a tablet and played the short video Lin Hao had submitted. "Is this your editing work?" Lin Hao nodded again. "I'll provide you with some material, and I ask you to create a piece right now." Lin Hao mastered all the interview questions flawlessly, demonstrating exceptional skill. The three interviewers immediately regarded Lin Hao as a promising talent and a tool. Marvel isn't without Chinese editors and writers, and Hollywood has its share of accomplished Chinese directors. Unfortunately, in this predominantly white world, Chinese people always have to work harder and face a glass ceiling. Good seedlings like Lin Hao are highly sought after by every comic book or film company, because they understand the work ethic of Chinese employees and know that these yellow-skinned workers always outwork their white counterparts. Most Chinese who choose to come to America for careers aim to assimilate into mainstream white society, so they'll work twice as hard. What capitalist boss wouldn't want such an employee? Go back and wait for news. Although they'd already decided to hire Lin Hao, they deliberately held off for a few days. 3 days later, Lin Hao finally received his official offer, joining the real world of Marvel Studios, starting as an assistant to the lead artist. For the greater good, Director Lin naturally tolerated these minor issues. He toiled diligently at Marvel for over a month, even being assigned to promote Avengers: Infinity War, where he finally gained access to the warehouse where original artwork and film masters were stored. Artwork and master tapes for new releases are undoubtedly company secrets, off-limits to senior management. However, artwork and master tapes released years ago are often stored in a warehouse, like archival documents after a project is concluded. Unless they represent a memorable master's manuscript, these original artworks are of little value, especially single-volume reels that have received a lukewarm reception. The same is true for film masters. With the widespread adoption of digital cinema, film masters have lost the texture of their film days, significantly reducing their collectible value. Furthermore, commercial special effects films often don't strive for the aesthetics of art house films, opting instead to use film to increase production costs. This has led to a decline in the value of master tapes for long-released special effects films. Marvel Studios is currently busy releasing its blockbuster, Avengers: Infinity War, leaving little attention to the pile of original artwork and film masters stored in the warehouse. This gave Lin Hao an opportunity. Under the guise of learning and improving, he asked his superiors for access to the warehouse to search for the work of his predecessors and volunteered to stay and work overtime. Seeing the hard work of these dedicated workers, how could the company's leadership disagree? Going to bed. Thankfully tomorrow's the weekend. I did complain a bit in the last chapter, mainly about a bunch of weirdos. After I set the comment follower limit, some of them actually went to my old books and left bad reviews, calling me garbage without even reading them. Western remote dog raising technology is truly amazing. Chapter 247: How to get rid of the influence of Marvel consciousness? After obtaining the magic pen, Lin Hao immediately devised a method to free his universe from Marvel's control, a substitution. Specifically, Lin Hao would use the pen's power to transform the virtual into the real, creating a real universe identical to his own, replacing the one on Marvel's console. From then on, in the minds of Marvel editors, Lin Hao's created universe would be the one they understood. The replaced original universe would become black under the lamp, detached from Marvel's consciousness, no longer under its control. Why not simply add a setting like invulnerability to his own universe? Or why not simply remove his universe from the confines of the Marvel universe? Because it couldn't be done. The magic pen had its limitations, requiring its owner to have a complete understanding of the object being drawn. It couldn't create anything beyond conscious awareness. Lin Hao had no idea what invulnerability even meant. Similarly, the magic pen wasn't Pangu's axe. It couldn't recreate the world or completely transcend the universe within the Marvel universe. Therefore, the magic pen can only help Lin Hao achieve his initial goal of escaping control. True transcendence still has a long way to go. It's like establishing a base first, then continuing to wreak havoc, not only within this universe, but also in other universes within the multiverse. To fulfill his plan of substituting someone for someone else, there are two prerequisites. One is to obtain the status of a Marvel editor, the other is to find the original comics and film and television masters that constitute his universe. Why? Because creating a universe isn't something you can just do. Under normal circumstances, Lin Hao couldn't possibly draw a realistic universe, as his understanding of the universe is barely scratching the surface. With the current state of human civilization, Who dares to claim a sufficient understanding of the universe? However, within the vast box of the Marvel Universe, there's a place where one can learn about the power of creation and understand how to create a universe, the Marvel Editorial Department. While it may sound absurd, the Marvel Editorial Department truly possesses this power of creation. This is the heavenly law within the vast box of the Marvel Universe. With editor status and the authority to modify and create, anyone can master the method of creation. Some might ask, if that's the case, wouldn't it be possible to simply acquire Marvel, the real world, or control its editors so they no longer influence Lin Hao's universe? Really not. Even if one rises to a high position within Marvel, or even directly acquires the company, the new setting and universe created will simply be another product within the Marvel Universe's box. Even violently destroying the Marvel Editorial Department here would be meaningless. Deadpool killed the editor twice within 2 separate comic books, yet he still lives in a resistance created by others, lost in a daze. For now, Lin Hao can only resort to using a different method to disappear from his own universe, freeing himself from Marvel's control and continuing to accumulate strength for his ultimate transcendence. Even being a Marvel editor isn't enough, because Marvel has created so many universes. Without knowing which one he's in and finding the original comics and film and television masters that comprise it, he can't accurately locate it. Many people know that the main universe in Marvel Comics is Earth 616, which later became the Ultimate Universe, Earth 1610. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is designated Earth 199,999. The new Deadpool vs. Wolverine film marks Deadpool's universe as Earth 1005. And the Earth 616 universe officially appears in the film, as indicated by the voiceover during the interview with Happy the producer. The previously mentioned Spider-Gwen's universe is Earth 001. Marvel has assigned a number to nearly every established universe, though most remain unspecified. After joining Marvel, Lin Hao, in addition to showcasing his talents, has been quietly gaining access to the warehouses housing a vast collection of comic book manuscripts and film and television master tapes. Once granted access, Lin Hao must first determine the number of his own universe and then, using that number, search for as many comics or films as possible that comprise it. Fortunately, Marvel is a relatively strict company, having established an effective archiving system over its 70-plus year history. Lin Hao found an internal archival record called Detailed Explanation of Each Universe and, following the clues, searched for the number of his universe and determined which comics and films comprised it. This task consumed him considerably. After all, there had to be a limit to voluntarily working overtime. One couldn't stay at the office 24/7 and constantly run to the warehouse. Even the most insensitive person would have noticed something was amiss. While the archives from over 70 years seemed overwhelming, Lin Hao could start with a cinematic universe. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was launched with the 2008 release of Iron Man, but Blade in 1998 had already achieved significant box office success. If one traced the history back to the 1944 black and white film Captain America, Lin Hao quickly zeroed in on works that had already appeared in his universe, such as Iron Man and Ghost Rider. He then searched for the keyword SHIEAR, and quickly found several plausible candidates. There's no Inhumans, not this one. There's Agents of SHIELD, not these two. Oh wow. Downhearted hasn't filmed yet, but it already has Tony Leung Chu Y. Finally, through the process of elimination, Lin Hao found the two most similar numbers. Both universes contain Ghost Rider, Iron Man, and Agents of SHIELD, but neither has the 2017 release of Inhumans. The exact nature of the various forces and supernatural groups within Marvel's multiverses is, of course, determined by the Marvel Editorial Department. The editors can cram whatever they please into the universes, acting like creators of these universes, freely adding and subtracting. This is precisely why Lin Hao and Zheng Xian hope to escape this fate. After carefully comparing the components of the two universes, Lin Hao pinpointed the sole difference in the ingredients: Guardians of the Galaxy, which one universe has and the other doesn't. Almost without hesitation, Lin Hao immediately chose the universe containing Guardians of the Galaxy, as the interstellar Whitebeard clone had already encountered Yuanchu and his adopted son. Even this so-called real world couldn't block the connection of the demonic contract. Lin Hao could telepathically browse the memories of Whitebeard's clone and confirm that he had seen Star-Lord. Number Earth 10,086. Lin Hao stared at the number, speechless for a moment. Before finally uttering two words, awesome. After confirming the number in all the comics, films, and television works that comprise this universe, Lin Hao began searching for the corresponding original drawings and film and television masters. After spending some time gathering everything in front of him, Lin Hao began his work. First, he used magic to smuggle the items out one by one. Then, using the space that Zheng Xian had prepared over a month, he began to copy the film and television masters. The drawings were simple, and Lin Hao's current skills were enough to copy them exactly. Of course, it couldn't be done in one go, the plot demanded it after all. First, he had to secure a base, then counterattack the multiverse. Chapter 248 Successfully escaped the control of Marvel consciousness. Are these the works that make up our universe? Zheng Xian saw the original drawings and film masters Lin Hao brought out one by one, and he had a vague idea of what Lin Hao was up to. But will making a fake copy and putting it back work, if it's just a regular copy? Of course not, Lin Hao laughed. I have to use my treasure, Lin Hao didn't explain further. He didn't want to cause any complications until the plan was fully completed, because the next step was crucial. Stealing some originals and masters wasn't a big deal. Marvel employees inevitably lose some during transportation and storage, and they even regularly destroy materials that have exceeded their shelf life. These actions wouldn't affect the corresponding universes. Destroying these originals and masters doesn't mean the corresponding universes will disappear. Only authorized Marvel executives can decide to modify the settings in order to affect these universes. As Zheng Xian suspected, simply copying the works that make up their universe and then stealing the originals would have no effect. Although Lin Hao had barely secured the title of Marvel editor, he still lacked the authority to modify or even create universes. Only the editor-in-chief or department had such authority. If these individuals were to manipulate the universe, not only would a real Marvel company outside the box be aware of it, but even if it were completed, it would simply be another newly created universe, still under the control of Marvel's consciousness. The rules remained unchanged, and it was meaningless. However, with Ma Liang's magic pen, Lin Hao could truly materialize his creations. This was because the pen's power surpassed that of the Marvel editorial department in this real world, originating from other boxes outside the Marvel universe. Therefore, the creations Lin Hao created would become tangible universes, and then all of them would be unified and integrated into Earth 10086, creating a brand new Earth 10086. This universe, created by Lin Hao and integrated into Marvel's already numbered universes, would completely replace the original universe they inhabited. The power of transforming the virtual into the real can cause the Marvel editorial department to recognize Lin Hao's creation as their original universe. This is because Lin Hao holds a legitimate editorial position and possesses the true power of creation granted by the Divine Pen, a level of authority higher than that granted by Marvel's top brass. After the substitution, the Marvel editorial department, and even the Marvel consciousness, will shift their attention to Lin Hao's Earth 10086 universe, and their influence will only be limited to this universe they recognize. Lin Hao and his team's universe will be free from the Marvel editorial department's oversight and manipulation, because in their perception, Lin Hao's newly created Earth 10086 is the original universe. It's like having a car, and then I create an identical copy, even down to the exact same wear and tear, and then secretly swap it out while you're not paying attention. This car will also better suit your subconscious needs because it's more real, so real that your conscious mind will recognize it as yours. Lin Hao's copied drawings and film and television masters will be even more realistic than the real thing, making it impossible for Marvel staff to tell the difference. As the final stroke of the pen fell, Lin Hao and Zheng Xian suddenly felt a surge of joy from deep within, an indescribable elation, like the shackles suddenly vanishing, like a bird freed from its cage, soaring freely. Did it work? Zheng Xian cast a nervous glance at Lin Hao. It worked, Lin Hao nodded, smiling. Didn't you feel it? I feel it. Even Zheng Xian, who had lived for over 2,000 years, couldn't remain calm at this moment. It's just that I can't believe it. God knows how desperate he felt when he encountered Wade Wilson, the fourth wall breaker, and learned about the Marvel editorial department. Facing these creators, Zheng Xian was at a loss for a solution. He had once been enraged, contemplating slaughtering the editors and even destroying Marvel. But after hearing that Deadpool had already killed him twice, he regained consciousness and realized that such an approach was pointless and would only expose himself. Zheng Xian experienced anger and despair, and after a long period of depression, he finally gathered his strength and planned a rebellion, finding many allies from across the multiverse. However, these natives of the Marvel Universe were simply created by the editors. Even if they realized their fates were being manipulated, they, like Deadpool, were powerless to resist, let alone free themselves and their universe from Marvel's control. It wasn't until Lin Hao gradually demonstrated his value, bringing more and more things that didn't fit the multiverse's style, that Zheng Xian began to investigate Lin Hao, ultimately revealing the truth to him and bringing him into the Resistance Alliance. Zheng Xian had been prepared to wait patiently for decades, even centuries. After all, as an immortal, he possessed ample patience. He even worried that Lin Hao wouldn't be able to accomplish his goal within his lifetime, but he never expected it to be accomplished in just a few years. Could it be that his trip to America accelerated things? Zheng Xian speculated, suddenly filled with regret. If I had known this would happen, I should have sent him to wreak havoc on the Americans years ago. Lin Hao was unaware of Zheng Xian's sudden regret. He didn't have time to dwell on anything else, he had to proceed quickly. Just now, they all felt a sense of relief. The single eternity in their universe must have felt it too, for this was effectively ripped out of the multiverse eternity, disconnecting it from its multiverse big brother. How could it possibly not react? The single eternity would undoubtedly carefully investigate the changes throughout the universe. Earth, being so unique, would likely be its first target. As for the multiverse eternity, there was no need to worry. The magic pen had recreated a single eternity. At most, it would sense a momentary disconnection between itself and a single cell. Unable to decipher Lin Hao's secrets, it could only conclude that something had happened to the universe again. As long as the multiverse wasn't destroyed, it wouldn't react. Even if the multiverse eternity persisted, it would ultimately conclude that the changes originated with a real-world Marvel editorial department, understanding that the editors were revising the settings. While the multiverse eternity claimed to be omniscient and omnipotent, this was merely a setting given by Marvel. It couldn't be aware of the world outside its box, perceiving only this real world as reality. After all, the real Marvel studio couldn't create a real god. Did Stan Lee dare to claim he'd created a deity more powerful than God, the Three Pure Ones, or even the Tathagata Buddha? If he dared to say that, he'd have been thrown into a mental hospital long ago. So, Lin Hao's next move was to use his magic brush to erase the single eternal from his universe. The operation was simple, simply draw an extra frame on the comic strip where the single eternal appears. He could find any excuse to kill him, even force him to commit suicide. But just as Lin Hao began to write, Zheng Xian saw what he was doing and suddenly said, "Couldn't you just remove the no physical attributes and invulnerable settings from the single eternal, leaving him as he is, huh?" Lin Hao was startled and turned to look at Zheng Xian. Others need a chance to regain their confidence. Zheng Xian's expression returned to seriousness. Ever since I told them about the existence of the Marvel editorial department, everyone has wanted to resist, but hasn't found a way. They've lost confidence and even started to fear, becoming numb and sinking. We need a battle to kill single eternity with our own hands, so that our comrades can re-establish their faith in the struggle. Lin Hao could understand the despair and powerlessness that Zheng Xian and those allies he had never met had felt. After all, these Marvel natives were different from him. Just the thought of fighting against a creator god was a rare thing. But if a battle breaks out, everyone will be in danger, or even die. What we fear is not death, but the lack of hope. Zheng Xian's expression was very calm. Chapter 249 Director Lin can now practice Taoism. Okay, Lin Hao turned his head and leaned over to continue drawing. In the original setting, both the single eternal and the multiverse were abstract entities, devoid of physical properties. Attacking Eternal was like battling one's own thoughts, incapable of harming Eternal. It was as if Eternal had activated a health lock, preventing its health bar from showing. Zheng Xian's request was for the single eternal in his universe to reveal its health bar. He would kill any monster that dared to reveal its health bar. Lin Hao agreed to Zheng Xian's request because, by removing the health lock, he was now confident of defeating the single eternal. Super Saiyan 4's combat power and newly acquired transfiguration were more than enough to deal with the eternal in a single universe. However, as a precaution, Lin Hao removed the single eternal's omniscience and omnipotence, retaining only its combat power. Furthermore, to prevent the single eternal from escaping to another universe when the situation arose, Lin Hao also covered the entire universe with a solid barrier. This barrier not only provided concealment and durability, but also served as a radar warning. Lin Hao detects all people and objects that suddenly appear within the base universe. Using the dimensional gem and portal magic that work within this universe, Lin Hao can reach it at top speed. Why this setup? Because while Lin Hao, through a tactical substitution, used his own creation, Earth 10086, to substitute the base universe for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he couldn't change the reality that the base universe remained within the Marvel Cinematic Universe's confines. It's like a stealth aircraft. Due to its advanced technology, it's invisible to radar, let alone the naked eye. Therefore, the enemy can't formulate a plan to target it, because it doesn't exist in their consciousness. How can they target it? However, regardless of whether the enemy can detect it or not, the invisible aircraft is there, occupying a certain space. Even if the enemy is unaware, a saturation attack, leaving no blind spots, can still destroy it. The base universe still wanders within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, inevitably encountering wanderers who stumble across by chance. Lin Hao couldn't completely seal off this universe, as he still planned to harm America in other universes, reaping even more resentment from the living. After all, the Americans in this universe were gradually becoming more resilient to pressure. The experienced Great Demon King knew that as the target group's resilience improved, the resentment from the living he harvested would inevitably decrease. He needed to change his surroundings and continue his troublemaking. Beyond these modifications, Lin Hao didn't make any further changes. Even if he were to grant himself the power to create the universe, he could only entertain himself within this one universe, which was meaningless. His confidence had never been confined to the vast box of the Marvel Universe, but rather the power of the heavens from other worlds. Even if he became the supreme god while hiding in this universe, outside of Marvel's control, what good would that do? Having already known the truth, Lin Hao couldn't regard this universe as real and unique. Doing so would only be a pathetic act of self-deception, a pitiful act of looking at the world from a narrow perspective. He also had to worry about being affected by the indiscriminate multiverse destruction event. After all, without the skin, where would the hair be attached? Marvel didn't understand, nor would they, the Dalao Jinxin of Eastern mythology, so Lin Hao couldn't add this setting to the base universe through editorial revisions. He could only hope to obtain the true Great Dao, mystical method, re-establish earth, water, fire, and wind, and establish new laws of heaven. He couldn't achieve Dalao with his current magic pen. After completing all this, Lin Hao returned the copied drawings and master tapes to Marvel's warehouse and placed them there. However, Lin Hao took the transferred original drawings and film and television masters with him. While these items could only affect their respective universes in this real world, and with Marvel editorial identity and modification privileges, Lin Hao certainly wouldn't be so foolish as to leave such precious items behind. Then, in this real-world apartment, Lin Hao summoned the little demon, whom he hadn't loved for months. Oh, the demon said, throwing itself into its owner's arms and acting coquettishly. I've been busy with important things lately. Okay, I'll play with you later. Lin Hao rubbed the demon's round body, soothing it. Open the door, a portal of light appeared, and Lin Hao, carrying a large collection of comic manuscripts and film and television master tapes, entered the dimension linked to the little devil. What could be safer than this? Upon entering the portal, Lin Hao immediately noticed the changes within. Boss, Azure Dragon soared over, tearing up with snot and tears in his paws. Finally, you're back. I've been bullied so badly. He twisted his body, pointing out the scars. Lin Hao looked over and saw scars streaked with sharp wounds. Without a word, his observation haki swept across, capturing two spirits emitting a powerful aura. What's going on? Where did these spirits come from? Using apparition, Lin Hao appeared before the two spirits. They now occupied the area within the experimental area where Lin Hao had been resting. Two skeletons lay on the bed, one human holding the other, a canine skeleton. That's them. King Long rushed over from behind, pointing at the two spirits and accusing them of something. I told them to wait for you, but they wouldn't listen. They even beat me up. He's already killed several dogs at the farm. Lin Hao's expression darkened. The surrounding area was in shambles. The experimental area was relatively unscathed. Perhaps King Long had known the severity of the situation and deliberately avoided it. The rest of the area was slashed by sharp weapons. Lin Hao, his face dark, released the power of time, restoring everything. The two spirits, already wary, were stunned by this scene. Lin Hao seized the opportunity to blast a burst of spirit particles at them. Sensing the sudden change in their souls, they were once again stunned. Seizing this opportunity, The little demon, who had been working in perfect harmony with Lin Hao, flashed before the two spirits, slashing blood with two sharp strokes, then slapping the parchment against them with two sharp snaps. After signing the contract, Lin Hao reviewed their memories and confirmed their identities. He then stepped forward and touched the two skeletons on the bed. From Chinese Paladin, the skeletons of Jiang Ming and Nu Yuan. A trace of spiritual energy lingered on the skeletons, and Lin Hao chose to absorb it. Great! I finally started cultivating immortality, Lin Hao said in a cheerful mood. The Shushang cultivation techniques allow for ascension to immortality, but to be honest, the immortals of the sword and fairy world are much weaker than those in traditional mythology. They are merely casual cultivators and temporary workers in the divine realm. The so-called immortal realm is scattered among the earth-famous mountains and includes the 10 great cave heavens, 36 minor cave heavens, and 72 blessed lands. Immortals are achieved through human cultivation and are the necessary path to godhood. Their lifespans are long but finite, their mortal bodies are finite but limitless, and they serve as the transition between humanity and godhood. Weak as they may be, achieving immortality or godhood allows them to soar through the clouds. Lin Hao has no shortage of offensive means, but his flight methods are limited. He prefers standing flight to lying prone, particularly embracing the ethereal quality of soaring through the clouds. It's just cool. As for the increased wind resistance associated with standing flight, come on, after becoming an immortal, manipulating the laws of nature is just basic skill, right? Just as he was imagining the ethereal immortality of the future, and Yuan suddenly cried out in pain, "Husband, no! The demon spirits are coming out." Chapter 250, The Marvel World Can Finally Resurrect. There's such a good deal. Lin Hao's eyes lit up. He stared at Nu Yuan's spirit and asked, "Were to come out? Up or down? Should I open my mouth first?" Unexpectedly, there was a big giveaway. This was pure profit. Suddenly, a wide gash appeared in Nu Yuan's spirit's chest. Countless demons and monsters poked their heads out through the gaping hole, seemingly arguing over who would be the first to emerge. "Don't push. Everyone gets a share." Lin Hao stepped forward, thrust his hands into Nu Yuan's chest, and ripped open the gash. Instantly, demonic spirits from the demon-locking tower burst forth with eerie cries. Unexpectedly, the little demon was already rubbing his hands, fork in one hand, parchment in the other. He used his speed to his advantage, swiping left and right, expertly capturing the willing demons and monsters. A few minutes later, the little demon was followed by a line of demons, their recalcitrant demeanor gone. "Are there any more?" Lin Hao lifted Nu Yuan's spirit and shook it several times, making sure no more could escape from the opening before releasing the bewildered, fox-faced Nu Yuan. After clearing the demon from Nu Yuan's body, Lin Hao turned his gaze to Jiang Ming. "You should have some too, right?" These two unfortunate souls had been holed up in the demon-locking tower, bound to tangle with demons both in life and after death. Especially after death, when their souls couldn't enter reincarnation, they inevitably engaged in a love-hate relationship with the demonic spirits within the tower. Jiang Ming said, taking 2 steps back and shaking his head, "I can still suppress them." "Don't suppress them, I'll help you free them." Lin Hao stepped forward, thrusting his hands into his chest as well, and unleashed another group of extras. A horde of demons. Each of these demons and monsters looked so casual. It was obvious that Softstars artists were being lazy, well aware that ordinary people had no rights. At a glance, their number exceeded 100. Great, now we have the actors for 100 Demons Night Parade. Lin Hao took a few steps forward, and the demons and monsters all looked at him with eager yet fearful expressions. "I forgot, I'm Tang Monk now." Lin Hao, who had been busy with important tasks for the past few months, remembered and walked over to the shelf where the 4-soul jade was stored. He found it empty. Nu Yuan had hung a small cloth bag around her skeleton's neck. "You really know what you're talking about." Nu Yuan quickly untied the small cloth bag containing the 4-soul jade and respectfully handed it to Lin Hao, though her eyes still showed longing. Director Lin was never harsh with his own people. With a wave of his hand, he restored Nu Yuan and Jiang Ming's skeletons to their pre-death state. The power of the time baggage was so unreasonable that it could even reshape a crocodile bag into a crocodile. However, this was not resurrection, but simply intercepting a certain point in the past and future. The power of time only restored Jiang Ming and Nu Yuan's bodies. If they were ordinary people, or from an ordinary world without a fantasy background, it would merely restore 2 soulless bodies. However, Xianjian is a true Eastern fantasy world, filled with both humans and ghosts, including the ghost messenger Lei Yuanj. For both humans and demons on the path of cultivation, the return of souls to the body is simple. Seeing the skeleton, dead for over a decade, suddenly transformed into vibrant flesh, Zheng Ming and Yuan exchanged a glance and eagerly slid back inside. A moment later, the man and the fox opened their eyes. The large white fox in Zheng Ming's arms quickly reverted to human form, transforming into a youthful version of Fan Shengmei, at the peak of her beauty. The fox spirit was present, but since she was the wife of a subordinate, the great demon king, always a serious leader, had to turn back and take a closer look at the demons and monsters. What a pity. Why hasn't the peony demon from Taoyuan village been captured and imprisoned in the demon locking tower? Seeing the cowardly yet envious looks from these misfits, Lin Hao trimmed his hair, which hadn't been cut in months, leaving a blanket of black hair. Come one by one, the strongest go first. As soon as he finished speaking, King Long and several of his dragon brothers rushed over. Boss, let's divide the spoils. I'll make sure these misfits don't dare to cause trouble. Facing the playful dragon, Lin Hao punched him on the forehead, angrily saying, "You're a dragon, but you can't even beat a human. You're just food." Right, I want to win, but I don't have any skills. King Long immediately put on a pitiful expression. After all, this dragon was only a dragon from the wind and cloud world. Its bloodline talent couldn't match that of dragons from the mythical world, and perhaps even the dragons from the divine realm of the immortal sword world. Moreover, it lacked the corresponding skills. Facing the former Shushan prodigy, the acknowledged next-generation leader, it was understandable that he couldn't defeat him. Skills. Lin Hao immediately turned around, pulled out a snake demon from the demon spirit, and threw it in front of King Long. Let it teach you, within the world of Chinese paladin, there's a demon realm, with each major race occupying one or more cave realms, each with its own inherited skills. For example, the heroine of Chinese Paladin 4, Liu Mengli, originates from the illusionary realm and begins to awaken her bloodline memories upon reaching adulthood. This snake demon's spirit is over 100 meters long, and according to memories, it has cultivated for millennia, making it worthy of Shushan's capture and suppression in the demon locking tower. Clearly, it was quite powerful in life. After all, the younger demon had already been easily dispatched by the Shushan disciples, who were dedicated to slaying demons and defending the way, making them unworthy of the long journey back to the demon locking tower. Alright, King Long reluctantly said. He desired the dragon clan's skills more, but something was better than nothing. If he didn't practice now, he'd be abused later, and that would be a disgrace to the dragon. The demons began to share Lin Hao's hair. Nu Yuan, a fellow demon, also wanted a piece, but she didn't want to embarrass her husband, so she could only watch in order. That was until Lin Hao gave her the entire 4 souls jade. Take it, it's useless to me, thank you, master, for the gift. Nu Yuan was stunned and quickly bowed, half kneeling in greeting. Just call me boss from now on. Lin Hao waved his hand. I don't keep idle people here, I have to work. Zheng Ming, being a man, quickly stood in front of his wife and saluted. Boss, you have taken my wife and me out of the demon locking tower and restored our physical bodies. This is already a grace of rebirth. From now on, if you need anything, Zheng Ming will do his best. Okay, from now on, you will be the head of Shushan. Lin Hao's eyes rolled, and he immediately thought of many new ways to play. But there is already someone who is the head of Shushan. Zheng Ming had been staying in the space connected to the little devil for the past few months, unaware that he had arrived in another world, and only thought that this was still a cave in his original world. What's the big deal? Lin Hao walked over to the table, picked up the Marvel comic manuscript again, and casually replied, why not just create a new Shushan? I've been fed up with that pretentious Du Yuan for a long time. He's capable, but he doesn't act. He's always pretending to be a senior. Yuru's dead, Linger's dead, my youth is over. By the way, the new Shushan will have a black dog named Du Yuan, nicknamed the Mean Saint. Picking up the sketch, Lin Hao began adding settings for the base universe. Before, he didn't know what spiritual energy was and couldn't draw it even if he wanted to. Now he knows. The Marvel Universe can finally experience a spiritual resurgence. With spiritual energy, demons and monsters can be added. He can also add a Shushan, the 3 immortal mountains overseas, an ancient battlefield, the 9 provinces of China, and even the Heavenly Palace and the Sky High Palace. The world has become dangerous. Will it affect China in the base universe? No worries, he can create an ancient protective formation. Finding the legendary 9 cauldrons of day will activate the ancient formation covering the entire Chinese territory. Then you will understand why Central Asia, Indochina, and Siberia have been Chinese territory since ancient times. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.